Pip Parade. All the people driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going around that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth at this theme park. So what I do, mate, I shove a £5 in the pot and you can go in and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed, and very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the park's hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. And what about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner, says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. And they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed Whack the Rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a house of mirrors where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it a channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine a Scouser say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour
across the UK on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell with you between now and 1 o'clock. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed your extra hour in bed this morning. The clock in front of me is wrong and says 3 minutes past 11. It's 3 minutes past 10, of course, and I'm here right through to 1 o'clock. West Reading, the Health Secretary, says the Prime Minister has been hit by a new Hartlepool moment, referring to that disastrous by-election in Hartlepool. The Caerphilly by-election this week has been really bad for Labour. They've had a shocker of a week. The Health Secretary joins me in a few minutes' time. We're also going to talk about Kabatu, the migrant sex offender. He's now back in custody. That breaking news came in the last half an hour. How can we stop another Kabatu? That is the question we're asking today. You can tackle that from any angle you like, whether that's to do with the prison service letting him go, the police taking 2 days to find him, the fact that he was in this country in the first place. Just let me know your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. Also, Lucy Powell, the new deputy leader of the Labour Party, says that Starmer needs to soften on migration. I don't agree with that. Do you? Let me know your thoughts. 1 in 10 NHS appointments now carried out by the private sector. Do you care? Is that a thing we need to worry about? Also, Rachel Reeves considering slapping 2p on income tax in what would be a massive breach of Labour's manifesto. They said no taxes, no new income tax, no new VAT, no new national insurance, and of course they broke it on national insurance with employers' contributions. Lots to discuss here on Talk between now and 1 o'clock. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word Talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message, or you can give me a ring. All on the main number 0344 499 1000. So much to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. So stay with me here on Talk. Right then, let's get straight to it. In the last half an hour or so, we've got the news that Cabasu has been found. Kevin Hurley is with us, the former Detective Chief Superintendent of the Metropolitan Police. Kevin, thankfully, this scumbag is now back behind bars. The sex offender who was at the Bell Hotel in Epping, he is now in custody again. It took 2 days. Have the police done their job well? How complex was this to find this guy? Obviously, he made it to London. What's your assessment of what's happened in the last couple of days, Kevin?
Well, my overall assessment is, thankfully, when something really matters, the police service, particularly Metropolitan Police, remain absolutely excellent. This guy was actually stopped, having been spotted by patrolling officers, probably just after they'd had their Sunday morning breakfast, but they were sufficiently alert on a quiet Sunday morning to spot this guy walking down the street. So good work, and it shows that people are still out there actively hunting and looking for bad people. The actual action of finding him was like looking for a needle in a haystack. If you think about it, arriving late on Friday into East London and then disappearing amongst the population, tough job to find someone with no real links to London, but it was pretty obvious he was going to be caught. What with all the public out there observing him, a case that caused a lot of moral outrage, rightly so, still dressed in his prison tracksuit. So really good news, but I think the lesson that comes from this is something has to be done after yet another reminder with the parlous state of finance of the prisons estate. You know, only the other day we heard that government were changing the legislation to introduce more community sentences so that there weren't so many people going in prison. Now, it is the case there are people who are in prison who probably should not be, but without question, in the case of sex offenders like this guy, burglars, drug dealers, robbers and so on, prison absolutely works. Because you don't rehabilitate those kind of people.
Yeah, some people can't be rehabilitated. You're absolutely right, Kevin, and you know far better than I do that some people just cannot be rehabilitated. The huge number of people coming in and out of Chelmsford Neck, as he was, there's about 600 prisoners there. I think it's Category B prison, and you've got about 600 people there at any one time. About every month, about 200 leave and about 200 come in. We also know that 262 people have been released in error. This is a high-profile, disastrous fiasco of a case, but it's not isolated. We're talking about, what, 5 people a week being released, more than that?
Yeah, and what's particularly concerning, it's actually from a Category B type prison. Prison service, quite rightly, are very, very vexed to make sure no Category A prisoners ever escape, and ideally no Category B either. But what this is showing is the real failings of investment in the prison service to recruit and retain staff, so there's a good level of experienced people who know what they're doing, as well as maintain high levels of motivation. The bottom line on it is, if you don't pay the prison officers properly and you don't have adequate numbers of them and you don't train and manage them correctly with good quality positive leadership, this kind of stuff is going to happen.
Is that part of it? I mean, we don't know exactly why this happened. It could be corruption. It could be incompetence. It's clearly incompetence of some kind. I was speaking to a prison governor, 2 of them actually, over the past 48 hours, who said there is a long process, there is an established process, and there is a complex process. It's a 7-step process of all the different checks that are done before someone is released from prison. Yet something fundamentally went wrong here.
Yeah, again, it's human error. It's quality of staff. How diligent are they? How well are those individuals being supervised? I mean, there are many excellent people who work in the prison service, but these days far too few, because the conditions that they work under are horrendous, facing extreme violence, always being criticised for racism or alternatively too much force or bullying of prisoners. The net result of it is that in many of the prisons, the prisoners run the wings, and the prison staff, to some extent, are in fear of their lives to go on to them. So it all leads back to 14 years of the disastrous Tory flashes to the prison, which the Labour government are still not dealing with, and they're coming up with what may be a reasonable idea: more community sentences for some people, but for those who should be locked up, we need more prisons. And, you know, you come back to, did the police do their job in this case? Well, they did, but let's remember one thing. The reason why the prisons are stuffed to bursting is not because the RSPCA arrested those people and put them there. It was the police. So we're in a kind of real vicious circle of a failure of the criminal justice system.
Yes.
That even if the police do their job, there's nowhere to put them. And if they do go in the prisons, they're so understaffed and overcrowded that what happens is you get these kind of glaring errors every now and again. And as you said, 262 in the last year. Not very reassuring.
Well, it's not very reassuring at all. Kevin, thank you. That's Kevin Hurley, there, former Detective Chief Superintendent of the Metropolitan Police. Lots of people with suggestions for what to ask Wes Streeting. When's he going to stop patients being treated in corridors, says Margaret. That's a very good one. Andy says, please don't let Streeting talk over and around you. He will blag a load of rubbish and end on a party political broadcast. Put him straight on the NHS. It is no better than when he took over, but I guarantee he will try to make out it is. I'm sure it'll be a great show, says Andy. Does he think Lucy Powell was right when she quoted Corbyn's mantra, for the many, not the few? And Dan says, with corridor care going through the roof and yet another doctor strike looming, does Wes believe he's doing a good job? Well, there are quite a number of things I want to ask him about the healthcare in this country, certainly. Also about Kabatu being released. Anything else you think I should ask Wes Streeting? One thing I love about this job, there are many things I love about this job, but one of the things I love about this job is that you've literally got member of the cabinet, senior government minister, and anybody, any viewer or listener can send in a question, and we can never get through them all because there are always too many, but we try to do as many as we can, and my questions and your questions. So get them in. You can give me a ring and let me know. 0344 499 1000. You can talk to Tommy, he's on the phones today, or you can drop me a message, 87222. We're going to go to the debate desk next. Matthew Torbett is a former Labour advisor. I wonder what he thinks of Lucy Powell being the new deputy leader, and also the fact that Wes Streeting has said that this is a new Hartlepool moment this week. That's when Keir Starmer considered resigning. So are things really that bad for Labour? I'm sure many people will think they are. Also, Rachel Reeves considering slapping 2p on income tax. I'm going to ask Wes Streeting about that. He'll say, oh, we can't speculate, the budget, don't know what's in it yet, da-da-da-da. But actually, if income tax goes up by 2 pence in the pound, that would be a massive breach of Labour's manifesto. It would also be a huge cost for so many people. We'll go into all those different issues and then we'll talk to Wes Streeting. So stay with us here on Talk. There's loads coming up and I want your views on all of it too. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much for all your messages. Mitch has been in touch and says, "Morning, Peter. A relief this man is in custody, but let's be a little fair. He tried on several occasions to find out from the prison that what he had to do, where he had to go. He was obviously confused, and as far as I understand, his English is poor. He may be glad to be back inside and hopefully sent back to Ethiopia." This is Hadish Kabatu, finally back in custody. I've no sympathy for him because he's a horrendous sex offender who shouldn't be in this country in the first place. But nonetheless, I think Mitch has a reasonable point that we know from a lot of the reporting that Hadish Kabatu said, hold on a second, I don't think she should be out here, and went back on a number of occasions, went back to the receptionists, went back to the prison officers and said, I think you've made a mistake here, which is, you know, fair enough, actually. Matthew Torbett is with us, former Labour advisor in the studio. Elliot Keck is head of campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance. They're in the debate desk this morning. Your reaction to Kabatu coming back, Matthew? Obviously it's a good thing that he is back in prison, but how on earth did this happen?
I think there's a few different things at play. The fact that he was stood outside for 90 minutes trying to get back in is laughable in many ways.
Yeah. Again, it feeds into the farcical nature of this. It is like a farce.
And actually, my understanding is the individual involved in making this mistake is very senior, very experienced, and quite obviously distraught because he may well have thrown his career away with something so ridiculous. He'll have had to have been on a list yesterday and led down to the prison's reception through several doors with several different people at each different point, and nobody has realised or thought to raise alarm.
Surely, Elliot, he is one of the most high-profile prisoners. Like, surely everyone in Chelmsford Neck knows who this guy is because of the very high-profile nature of the Bell Hotel protests and all the rest of it. I spoke to 2 prison governors over the last 48 hours. Both of them talked me through all the steps, as Matthew was referencing there. Sort of 6 or 7 different steps before this person is let out, yet he was let out.
Yeah, it's remarkable. A man that sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl within 10 days of arriving in this country seemed to have the interests of British public safety more in his own mind than the prison officers that were letting him out. I think his eyewitnesses have said multiple times he tried to alert prison officers that something might have been awry. But I just think it speaks to the fundamental issue that we have tens of thousands of people, mostly men, sort of in their 20s and 30s arriving. We don't really know who they are, we don't know who their backgrounds are, and they should never be in a position where they're going through normal legal processes. They should never be in a position where they're being put into the community, into hotels, into populated areas. We should have detention centres where we are putting them before removing them very, very swiftly, ideally to their original country of origin, if not to a third country, like in, for example, the Rwanda scheme that was dropped by the Labour government.
Who do you think is to blame for this? Obviously the prison officer who let him out, but is there a wider aspect here? Are there other people we should be holding to account as a result of this, Matthew?
Yeah, I think it speaks to the failure of the prison system. I think if you look, 83 people were released by mistake in 2023. That rose last year to 115. We've now had a 262. It's a 115% increase of those mistaken. And obviously, you know, this has sort of been all right in the sense if he's been found in 24 hours, you get released with £85.60. He's got nowhere to go. I don't know if his English is very good. I think there's another thing at play. If you're going to pay people who are essentially putting their lives at risk working in our prisons peanuts, then you will get monkeys. These people aren't the committed, talented people that you want. It's as simple as that. I don't doubt they don't do hard work, and some of them have the right intentions. These have got to be the best and the brightest.
Yeah, well, they pensioned off, and I say they. I mean, I was at the Ministry of Justice for 6 months. I've taken responsibility for some role in this in 2020. They pensioned off, although before that was exactly what I'm referencing here. They pensioned off a load of senior officers. They said, right, we're going to cut costs. We're going to get rid of some of the senior officers. We're going to pension them off, let them go. And as you say, if you pay, you know, sort of bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, but nonetheless quite naive people in their early 20s, for example, not very much money, when they don't have people higher up the chain actually helping them, mentoring them and so on, you're not necessarily going to get the best people. Now, I know a lot of prison officers who work really hard. It's a really tough job. It's a really dangerous job as well. But also, if you're going to recruit 20,000 police officers, Elliot, as Boris Johnson said he was going to do, I know that's happened to some degree because Theresa May got rid of them. well, actually, you're in a situation where people are going to go, am I going to go down the policing route, or am I going to go down to the prison officer route? Well, policing's better paid, and it's still a very dangerous job, but a safer job.
Yeah, I think the TPA are very rarely in favour of increased public spending on anything, given we spend about 46% of our GDP on public spending, but the prison system is probably one area where there does need to be a significant increase in spending. There does need to be significant investment. We do need to build more prisons. We have a fundamental problem that there is a certain percentage of the population that cannot be trusted to engage in civilised society, and we need to remove them for as long as possible under normal laws and normal trials from society. And
Matthew,
clearly we don't have enough prison spaces to do that. We don't
build more prisons.
Yeah, I think we absolutely need to build more
We've
prisons.
been building more prisons since as long as Kingdom has come, and yet we're in a prison crisis. Explain that to me. How do we build ourselves out of a crisis?
Well, you need to build enough prisons until the point that you're able to remove everybody that you need to remove from society.
How does that work if prison doesn't work?
Well, prison does work. Prison removes a person from society, and as a result, they're not able to continue committing crime.
90% of people that were on early release last year ended up back in prison. Why?
Well, I'd suggest that they were released far too early because their sentences were far too lenient.
So if they'd been released 3 months later, they'd be fixed.
Well, if they'd been released a year later, if they'd been released 2 years later, then that would have been 2 years in which they couldn't have committed those crimes.
No, I think what the prison system currently does is we actually create better criminals rather than rehabilitating. There is far too much, as you're suggesting with regards to the building, far too much focus on the punishment, which is absolutely right. We need to punish people.
I'm not interested
very
in
little on the rehabilitation. And with reoffending, as the Taxpayers Alliance will well know, costing us nearly £20 billion a year. That's a better way of using.
Surely that argument, we'll come to you in a second, Elliot, but surely that argument makes sense because Matthew's coming at it from a Labour perspective. I'm politically homeless, but I was a Conservative special.
Oh, so am I, Peter. Don't worry about it.
But I'm politically homeless, but I did work for the Conservative government in regard to this.
Yeah.
And the issue I always put was a tax one, and I said, right, unless you're Rose West or Wayne Couzens, you're going to get out. There are sort of 75 people, I think, who are whole life tariffs. Unless you're them, you're going to get out. So why don't we invest in the prison system, which in fairness you've talked about, and try to rehabilitate people who can be rehabilitated. Some of them can't. Some of them are just evil people. Because to send someone to prison is about the same as sending a kid to Eton each year.
Yeah,
and
it's
that's
very expensive.
It's 55 grand, something like that per year. That's before you get to young offenders institutions where you're in up to 170, 180,000 pounds a year per prisoner. So to me, it makes sense to put money into rehabilitation, to try to say to people, look, you might just be a bad person. There may not be any way we can make you go on the straight and narrow. But when people come out of prison, when they have paid their debt to society, I want them to pay taxes. I want them to have a roof over their head. I want them to get a job.
I think I actually move away from both the rehabilitation and punishment point. The punishment point I don't find particularly interesting. I get that it's very important to the victims, this idea of punishment. For me, prison is about ensuring that we're able to remove people that, as I said, are not able to engage in civilised society for as long as we possibly can, and that means that there are people that get sentences of 5-6 years for rape. These sentences actually happen. I think we can safely say that once you have raped someone, you are probably never going to be able to engage healthily in civilised society again, and that means we should be looking at 10, 15, 20, 25 years in prison. It's always the case that people will end up being released with the exception of whole life terms, but the longer we can keep people in prison, the longer we can keep serious people in prison, the crime will drop precipitously as a result, and we can invest in rehabilitation, and there are some prisoners that can be rehabilitated.
So the reason that we're wasting money at the moment is, as you'll have seen in David Gauke's review, because sentences since 1993 have almost doubled with regards to their severity, the prison population therefore has also doubled since 1993.
For a long time, crime was dropping quite precipitously. In fact, in particular, although there are issues around some low-level crime, some of the high-level crimes have seen quite significant drops. So what we have seen, with the exception, there's been the uptick in crime in the last few years, unfortunately, but for a long time we saw a very significant decline in crime, because funnily enough, if you keep criminals locked away for longer, they are not going to be able to commit anywhere near as much crime.
Until they are released, and therefore there are no second chances. No. This is where you get it totally wrong. I think you need to look at alternatives to prison. There is no way somebody shoplifting should be in prison for 6 weeks. What are they getting from that?
Okay, but what about someone who's shoplifted the 20th time?
Yeah, there's an issue then. Some people are beyond reproach. There's no doubt.
We see this. We see people put in prison for 10 months for the 100th offence that they've committed. The 100th time they've been in court, and we are putting them in prison.
Well,
for
I've
10
covered
months.
magistrates' courts as a journalist, and there are lots of people, time and time again, who do these what are called low-level offences. It doesn't feel that way if you're a shopkeeper, but it is factually less serious than murder or armed robbery or whatever. So, you know, Elliot's right in that people are trying to, a lot of the prison system, a lot of the magistrates try to keep people out of prison for a long time. At some stage you do have to put people in prison, and I know what you mean about short sentences, and actually sometimes people learn how to be criminals better in prison, being short sentences which are not good. But what's the alternative, Matthew?
You have things like restorative justice, you have things like community sentencing. The problem I have is that community sentencing is seen as a lesser. I think in the 21st century, whether you've gone to prison or not, it may well be Googleable. You've already ruined part of your life. You may not be able to see your children, you may not have access to your home, and your life is still ruined, but you haven't had to go in prison, you haven't cost us 55 grand a year, and you've not learnt to be a better prisoner. Or many of the 1 in 12 that go into prison at the moment because of the state of our prisons end up with a drug problem when they've never taken drugs before. It's miserable places.
Where I'll agree with you, Matthew, is that if we're talking about a first-time offence, for, as you know, as we discussed, a relatively low-level offence, and we're talking about a 6-week prison sentence, I can see the argument for why, for first-time offenders, very short-term prison sentences are probably counterproductive. But the second we're getting on to career criminals, the amount of times that you see stories about career criminals being put away for 6 months for a relatively low-level crime when they've got, you know, this is the 100th time they've been wrapped, it's absolutely extraordinary. There's a big chunk of the population that we just need to keep out of civilised society for as long as possible, and it's not about rehabilitation, and nor is it about punishment, because punishment is, you know, punishment is this sort of like kind of this biblical phrase. It's actually just about removing people from society.
Final thought from Matthew.
Well, just moving away from that slightly, not to discount the points made, you know, fair enough. I think what we may have found this gentleman even quicker. Speaking with my homelessness hat on, if people are released with somewhere to go afterwards, the fact that he's roaming the streets anyway and could be deeply dangerous is silly. I think we need to be investing more in those jobs that have gone, that would prepare people for life on the outside.
I totally agree that people should have a roof over their head. They should hopefully have some sort of gainful employment and be in some way contributing to society and paying back their debt that way as well. So Matthew and I coming at it from slightly different angles, but I think agreeing on the final point there. We'll come back to the debate desk and we'll be speaking to the Health Secretary Wes Streeting, his party colleague, and his cabinet colleague David Lammy, the Justice Secretary, pertinent to what we're talking about, has referenced Hadish Kabatu. He said Kabatu has been arrested, is now in custody and will be deported. Thanks to the Met, Essex and British Transport Police for their swift and thorough work. I've already ordered the immediate strengthening of release checks and a full investigation into what went wrong. We'll ask the Health Secretary about that. Wes Streeting coming up after the break here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who has been in touch. Lots of ideas for questions to Wes Streeting. I know the top team behind the glass are going through all those, and they're going to give me a list of the ones that we can ask. There are loads I want to talk to Wes Streeting about. He will be here in a few minutes' time. In the meantime, we're on the debate desk with Matthew and with Elliot. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. Also, Keir Starmer has talked about Kadish Kubatu. He's been on social media. The Prime Minister saying he will be deported after being brought back into custody. We must make sure this doesn't happen again. Yes, well done. Yes, no, good for you. That's great. Let's make sure it doesn't happen again. Very good Prime Ministering there. Speaking of his right-hand woman, Rachel Reeves, there are thoughts that she could put up income tax by 2%. I don't think I'm even going to ask Wes Streeting about this morning, because I just know exactly what he's going to say. He's going to say, well, let's wait for the budget, let's wait for what Rachel Reeves actually says. This is all speculation. So I don't actually think, maybe you disagree with me and text in if you do, but I actually think it's not even worth the question for Wes Streeting, because I just think there's so many different things I want to ask him this morning. But from your perspective, Matthew, this would be a big breach of the Labour manifesto, wouldn't it? Because they said no more income tax rises, no VAT rises, no national insurance rises, but that's about 75% of tax. And the money, you know, she would argue, Rachel Reeves would argue, has to come from somewhere. I would argue actually maybe a bit less public spending. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think it was very silly. I think I maybe said to you during the election, we've got to be truthful with people. There's no way you can cut spending and not tax and it end up all right for everybody, or were they going to increase? Either way, it made very little economic sense. I think there are better ways of doing this, potentially. They shouldn't have ruled out the levers anyway. They went too far, I felt, during the election to go, we're not going to be Liz Truss. I think just saying you're not going to be Liz Truss and you're a different party was enough. I think to be totally in hock with the OBR was totally bizarre, when 99% of the people in the country go, what on earth's the OBR, who really cares? Just promise you're not going to do what she did at her fiscal event and you would have been okay. I think there may be, having spoken to Elliot in the sort of the studio earlier, there may be a rare period of agreement where I think both of us would support scrapping the triple lock to ensure raising a decent amount of money. And I think it is insane that
it's easy for us to say as young men, all three of us, youngish men in my case, it's easy for us to say scrap the triple lock. There are a lot of pensioners who would be very, very worried about what you're saying there, Matthew.
Which they would. And if you were going to make this worthwhile and annoy older people, you'd have done this for, you know, potentially 30 billion quid or whatever it might be, than have the very bad optics of freezing Doris at home for the winter fuel allowance and bringing in 1.5. But you're also looking ahead to the future. It's totally unsustainable. And if you get rid of it, nobody else is going to promise to put it back in because they can't afford to, basically. So it's silly politics, I would say.
Elliot?
Yeah, I mean, listen, over the last year to 18 months, the Labour government has built up this house of cards on the economy, where they've gone on a spending binge that we've almost never seen before in British history. So September was the highest borrowing since the height of the pandemic, a point at which something like 1 in 4 British workers were having their salary paid for by the government. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of businesses were receiving massive loans and handouts. We had a huge test and trace system, and the government has gone on an absolutely massive spending binge since the Labour government came to power. And they're now at their end of their week-long trip to Vegas. They've maxed out their 4th and final credit card, and they've realised that actually the only lever that they can pull is income tax, because they had this ultimate lie, deception to the British people, which was that businesses could pay, farmers could pay, private schools could pay, you know, investors could pay more on capital gains tax, and none of this was true, right? All of these taxes have caused huge damage to the economy. They have not raised anywhere near as much as they were being promised. Tax receipts are nowhere near as up as they were expecting, and as a result, they've realised the only tax they have left available is either VAT, national insurance, or income tax. The really big revenue raisers. Yeah. That, you know,
what about a mansion tax? We've got the Mail on Sunday talking about a mansion tax, saying that homes over £2 million. Thankfully, I'm not in that position of having a home worth over £2 million, it must be said. But should we tax those people? Is that a fair tax?
It won't raise revenue. I mean, it will just drive more of the top 1% out, right? The top 1% used to pay 31% of income tax in their country. Over the last year, that's dropped to 26%. And the reason why is because the richest of the rich are leaving, right? And so that means that income tax burden is starting to cascade down the rest of the population. The top 1% contribute a colossal amount of our revenues, way more than, you know, the top, I think, the bottom 10%, bottom 50% pay 10% of income tax. Top 1% now 26%, used to be 31%. So you can try fiddling with all these other taxes, these wealth taxes and mansion taxes and savings taxes, etc., etc. It won't raise revenue. It will distort economic incentives. It will drive the top 1% out, and that is why Rachel Reeves is waking up to reality that the only way to pay for her colossal spending binge is going to be by taxing very, very ordinary earners, people on £15,000, £20,000, £25,000.
What do you make of that, Matthew?
The levels of borrowing is unsustainable. I never like when it's framed as sort of like a household budget or credit cards. Governments are very different, loss of borrowing happens, it's all very normal. The levels of borrowing and the fact that I think we borrowed something like 140 billion last year just to pay the debt on the borrowing is totally unsustainable. Yes, and
unsurprisingly, the Office of Budgetary Responsibility got it wrong again. They said it would be 80 billion, turned out to be 150. So slightly different. You know what they say, 70 billion here, 70 billion there. Sooner or later, it all adds up to real money.
And I think it comes with targeting money better. You know, there's a lot of talk about government waste, which I think is legitimate. I think when we talk about things, even like the welfare bill over the last 12 months, there's a better way of targeting this money. Is it worth just handing hand over fist money to people who are basically in the doldrums at the moment and not really ready to work, or is it better using targeted talking therapy with that money to ensure people are getting back into work and therefore contributing, more money's coming in? I know there's a lot of talk about the 2-child cap. I think morally, yeah, fair enough as a Labour person. I think there's somebody told me the other week what you might want to do instead, and maybe the TPA would have thoughts on cutting VAT. Those at the bottom tend to spend more money, and therefore if VAT isn't on certain things, they will spend more, or they will have more money to spend, therefore promoting growth ever so slightly. And if you want to be talking about growth, maybe you don't want to be doing things as you've done previously, like raising national insurance contributions when there had been no growth, which is totally against Treasury orthodoxy. And you might go, well, I've found 4 to 6 billion, that's great. But what you've also done is cause something to be purposely inflationary, therefore going back against any money you've potentially raised.
Elliot, I'll come to you in a second, but I just want to read out a couple of messages. Terry in Birmingham says, regarding the triple lock, UK pensioners are only now approaching pensions paid in Europe, and you want to stop it. I don't personally necessarily want to stop it, but I do think we need to have a discussion about it. Hopefully you'll get old and may regret what you say now. How about public service pensions, rein them in? Terry, I would agree with that. Pretty sure when I get to 67 there's not going to be a state pension for me.
I agree.
I'm nearly sure. I have a private pension, and I'm fairly sure there is not. I work hard to pay money into it, let me tell you. There is not. I just don't think I'm going to be a state pension. Grant in Leicester says, regarding prisons, your guest discussing rehab and longer sentences, etc. Prison should be an experience that you don't want to repeat. Prison should be the deterrent against reoffending. Namby-pamby treatment of criminals just creates cost and jobs for gullible social worker types. Can't do the time, can't do the crime. Another person says Kabatu was also naive enough to keep his prison clothes on. Instead of changing into clothes he went to prison in, which I presume were in the bag he was carrying. Great show, I listen every Sunday. Mitch, thank you, and thank you for your loyalty, I appreciate that. Paul says, can we stop all this nonsense about using prisons as a tool to rehabilitate criminals? When do we stop using it purely as a punishment, says Paul. I think this might also be Paul, or maybe another Paul. What the whole of our justice system, including the police, is lacking is structure, which comes from the top. Lots on prisons, actually, which I'll come back to in a second. But I just want to get a final word from Elliot on tax and actually what Matthew was saying. Can you just tell us your thoughts on the VAT point, for example, it going down? Would it be a fair way to help people who are struggling?
No, I wouldn't cut VAT. I mean, if you really want to help people who are struggling the most, you want to target, firstly, direct cash transfers. Yep. That's the best way to do it. Or you could look at some sort of, income tax rebate or an increase in the personal allowance. The second you're cutting VAT, bearing in mind VAT doesn't apply to a lot of things that those on low incomes purchase. The second you do something like cut VAT, you're cutting the cost of luxury items for the very wealthy.
And there are lots of things that VAT's on that aren't luxury items. A chocolate bar is not a luxury item.
But all basic foodstuffs are children's clothes, etc. So VAT is not where I'd focus any tax cut.
Thank you both. We'll come back to you. We're now going to speak to the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting. Wes, good morning.
Good morning.
You have said that the Prime Minister has been hit by a new Hartlepool moment in regard to the Caerphilly by-election, which Labour did really, really badly in. At that time, Keir Starmer considered resigning. He found that such a serious by-election in Hartlepool. This week has not been a good one for your government for lots of reasons. Should the Prime Minister be considering his position now?
No, thank goodness he didn't resign after Hartlepool. Otherwise, I don't think we would have won the last general election. What he did do was recognise that a Labour heartland like Hartlepool that had stuck with us through thick and thin, rejecting us, meant that the Labour Party hadn't changed enough and wasn't changing fast enough to hold the trust and support of the people of Hartlepool. And he took that not just on the chin, he took it to heart, and he turned the Labour Party inside out, radically changed it so that we could win a general election that frankly no one thought he could win. And I think Keir Starmer will do the same now. Caerphilly has returned Labour MPs for over 100 years. To see Labour plummet to 11%, as we did last Thursday, is a result we shouldn't dismiss or downplay. When your voters are sending you a message, you've got to have the humility to listen. And that's what we'll do. I think what we will do, and what you'll see from the Prime Minister and from the government, is us attacking the same sort of challenges we have in the British state with government, and the challenges in our country with the same boldness, radicalism and energy with which we change the Labour Party.
It's been 16 months though.
We've got to take that message on the chin, and we will.
It's been 16 months though. It's not working. The polls are really bad for you. The by-election has been really bad for you. You now have a deputy leader who's urging the Prime Minister to be softer on migration, when every piece of information, every piece of polling, every election, the local council election, for example, a few months ago, is yet another message to say to go harder on immigration, because immigration is a really, really difficult issue. Has Lucy Powell on day one put her foot on it, made life more difficult for Keir Starmer? Or maybe that's what she wants to do, and maybe that shows the division at the heart of the Labour Party. What do you think?
No, I don't think so. Lucy is a team player. She's one of our best campaigners.
She's not a team player if she's criticising the Prime Minister. Wes, it's day one, and she's criticising the Prime Minister. That is not being a team player.
No, I think she is reflecting the mandate she has from the members, and I think that the Labour Party and the voters are actually, I think, in pretty much the same place, which is crying out for change. They want this government to be bold. They want to feel real improvements in our country. And one of the interesting things about immigration is, if you sort of rewind to where we were maybe sort of 20 years ago, immigration was a real divide in our country, where, broadly speaking, people on the right weren't happy about it, and people on the left weren't really bothered about it. And fast forward 20 years, and I can tell you that in my constituency, where we are incredibly multi-faith, multicultural constituency with many first, second and third generation migrants in my constituency, the people who are concerned about levels of migration in this country don't just look like me and have roots in this country going back as far as mine. They are people who themselves have come to this country, work hard, play by the rules given to this country, not just through their taxes but through their service and contribution, and are understandably concerned about high levels of net migration, so the legal migration, and our over-reliance on recruitment from overseas, as well as the boats. So actually, I think this is quite a unifying issue in our country. Everyone wants to see action on it, and we will deliver.
But you've managed to unify our viewers and listeners on the point that you're not dealing with it correctly. You have a one-in, one-out scheme that has put a few dozen people back to France. You've got thousands more coming across in boats. You've got one person who was brought here, or came here on a dinghy, was sent back at great expense, and then came back again on a dinghy. One in, one out isn't working, and nor are your other policies to deal with this. This is still a major, major problem, and you're failing to get a grip of it, aren't you?
Well, I think it's too early to say that one in, one out isn't working. And in fact, the fact that it isn't working.
You've got someone who's come back. Someone's come back. It's not working.
The fact that he is in this country and has been detected is an example of the biometrics working. He's been apprehended. He will be deported, and the guy will have wasted a lot of his own money paying people.
He's wasted a lot of our money as taxpayers. He's wasted a heck of a lot of ours.
word will soon get around that if you are coming to this country illegally, you will be dealt with and you will be deported. And more generally, we have seen record numbers of deportations in our
But that's not
year.
true, Wes,
There
is
is
it?
more to
That's
do.
not true, because you won't be deported. There are a few dozen people who've been deported. What's happening if you look at the levels, the percentages?
But that's only in the one-in, one-out scheme. That doesn't include all deportations, and we have seen those numbers of deportations go up. That started under Yvette Cooper. Shabana Mahmood will continue in that vein.
And the vast majority of them have been and the vast majority of them have been people who have left voluntarily, being told their visas have expired. Let's talk about the NHS, Wes. You are, of course, the Health Secretary. You capitulated to the doctors and gave them a 30% pay rise. Are you going to capitulate again?
No, and last year what I did was a deal with the resident doctors to recognise the fact that their pay hadn't kept up in line with inflation, that as early career doctors they were struggling with the cost of living, and we delivered a 28.9% pay increase. And I think that was not only the best deal in the entire public sector. I do think that was the right thing to do. I have been clear with them that I cannot afford to go further at this time, that I can and want to deliver more training places for doctors, including for those who are applying for training posts right now. I will not be able to do that if I'm footing the bill for further strike action. So this strike action is not only unnecessary, because there's a health secretary that wants to work with them, and completely reckless and unjustifiable given the 28.9% pay rise, it will also be self-defeating for resident doctors. So I urge them not to take this action. I urge the BMA to call off these strikes, get round the table, agree a deal on jobs and conditions that they can, say quite credibly, we've delivered for our members, but we're also going to move the NHS forward together. Strikes will be a lose-lose scenario, and I'm not going to allow other NHS staff or patients to foot the bill. The money will have to come from training places for resident doctors.
Can you answer a question from Margaret in Birmingham? We sent one in saying, when are you going to stop patients being treated in corridors? As an 81-year-old, I feel very strongly we deserve better, says Margaret in Birmingham. What would you say to her?
Yeah, and she's absolutely right. In fact, we're going to be publishing shortly the data on corridor care in our country, because I think sunlight is the best disinfectant. It will enable people like Margaret to hold me to account and me to hold the system.
So is it going to go up or down?
I've heard shocking stories that we'll be reducing corridor care. I actually want to see it eliminated. I don't want to see it. I mean, I can't do that overnight, but I do want to drive year-on-year improvement in the NHS. I want people to be able to see that and to judge us on that at the next general election.
Jess Phillips has been under huge pressure this week. We've had 5 members of the rape gangs panel advising this inquiry. 4 of them have pulled out. One has said she agrees with the other 4 but is going to continue advising them. They have no confidence in her. Do you think this can go ahead properly, and that answers can properly be got when Jess Phillips remains the safeguarding minister in the Home Office?
Yes, I do, and let me tell you that there is no one in the House of Commons who has done more as a Member of Parliament and throughout their career to tackle violence against women and girls than Jess Phillips. Now, I understand the criticism that these women have made of the process so far, and frankly, given what they have been through, they are entitled to say whatever they like, whenever they like, and when they level criticism, we've got to take it seriously, and we are taking seriously the criticism they've made in terms of what type of person should chair this inquiry.
Well, they've also said that Jess Phillips accused them of being liars.
We will not be watering down the remit.
They've also said Jess Phillips accused them of being liars.
I do not believe that at any point Jess has accused these women of being liars. She has not done that. And that there will be disagreements along the way, and I can understand, and I deal with lots of victims of the NHS in my job as Health Secretary. I can understand why these women, given what they have been through, and not just the horrific crimes that they were subjected to by these disgusting men, but also, frankly, the way in which these women have been consistently failed by the state, by the police that should have protected them.
But you're failing them now, are you not? Because it's taking you so long to set up. It's taking you ages to set this up. It's taking you far too long. You've had people withdrawing from the chairmanship to be considered for the chairmanship of it. You're letting them down right now, are you not?
Well, as I say, I can understand why there is low to no trust in the state given what these women have been through. We are only going to be able to rebuild that trust and confidence, I think, through action rather than words. And it is difficult, and I find this myself with some of the inquiries and reviews and actions that I'm taking in relation to NHS failure, for example. It is sometimes difficult to hold all families or all victims together on an issue and to have unanimity and total consensus. That is nigh on impossible. It only happens rarely. So there will not always be agreement, and we've got to manage that carefully and sensitively. But honestly, there is no one better for this than Jess Phillips. And frankly, the fact that someone who has withdrawn from even consideration of leading this inquiry, who had a fantastic record in Northern Ireland of dealing with the sensitivities and the toxicity of the legacy issues there, has pulled back from even consideration from chairing this inquiry, ought to give us cause for concern. We don't want a situation where good people do not want to put themselves forward to lead such an important inquiry because this issue seems too hot to handle or too toxic. So we've got to dial down the temperature, dial down the toxicity, re-establish good dialogue. And I'd just say to those women who've walked away from the inquiry, the door is always open and they will always be listened to. We won't always agree on everything, but we're certainly not interested in silencing these victims or trying to stop their criticisms of this government as we go about their work. We are sensitive to it. Given what they've been through, they're entitled to say whatever they like, whenever they like, and we've got to make sure we deliver justice for them. That is the most important thing.
West Streeting, Health Secretary, thanks for joining us on Talk this morning. We'll get reaction on the debate desk from Elliot and Matthew, and your reaction too in just a few minutes. Let us know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000.
The town itself, the little village, it's suddenly grown by a quarter of its population. It has only 5,000 residents there, and in the hotel there are about 1,200 asylum seekers who are living in this hotel. And so all the residents who were there protesting, they were saying to me, we have felt a real strain on public services. I've spoken to people whose children have now had to go to separate schools miles away because of the the growing of the population.
First of all, I'd like to start with, obviously, my heart and everything goes out to the family, a wonderful family, and the other victims of this guy. We know what he's capable of. We know what he's done. It's been proven. My heart goes out to them. This country is broken. This country is in such a mess, and just when you think it can't get any worse, this happens. And this is such a high-profile case that we all know about it. How many?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Pete in Teesside has a good point. Wes Streeting just said that Jess Phillips didn't say the victims were liars. They say she did. So did Wes just call them liars? Says Pete in Teesside. Jane says Wes Streeting is a great media performer, tone deaf, and unfortunately no understanding of how people are feeling in this country at all, says Jane. Andy says he won't be back on, in my opinion. He hasn't been his cocky self. Great show about Wes Streeting there. Wes is backing Jess Phillips, means she's a gunner. Did I hear that right, says Mark in St Albans? Yeah, by the way, I don't want Wes Streeting, or particularly Keir Starmer, to express his full confidence in me. That would be terminal. Mark in St Albans said, did I hear that right? Did Wes Streeting really say the fact somebody returned to the UK after being deported to France and then came back via a small boat and was detained again is a sign of success of the one in, one out policy? I am truly living in an alternate universe. Stop the planet, I want to get off. That was the most surreal bit for me. How did it feel to you, Matthew Torbett?
The first half was a lot of revisionism, the idea that we won the election because Keir Starmer absolutely changed the party inside out. People didn't care. The Tories went backwards and we stood still. He basically wasn't Jeremy Corbyn, which in a way is a success of sorts. But the Tories were always 20 points behind. I never felt we were 20 points ahead. So I think it was nothing to do with that. I think he's quite clearly deeply toxic and unpopular, Keir Starmer, as a leader. And I think unless we have a course correction with regards to that, clearly after May, when we get battered in Wales and Scotland, we'll lose the next election. It is as simple as that.
Do you think he's going to go after the elections in Wales and Scotland and the council elections? Or there will be calls for him to go? What do you think?
I think the pressure will become insurmountable from a load of backbenchers with quite small majorities going, if we can't win in our heartlands, then I've got no chance. I will certainly be working with individuals that want to run and stand on a progressive platform to get rid of him. I have no qualms about that whatsoever.
Angela Rayner?
Too soon. And I don't know if Angela will be that good. I think she's very useful. She's very popular amongst lots of people. But what's her vision? I want to know what you want the country to look like in 5 years, and I don't think Keir Starmer has that. And I don't know if Angela's quite got that.
Maybe it's a Tory vision, one without stamp duty. Elliot, what did you think of what Wes Streeting was saying?
I think the difficulty that Wes has is pretty much every policy area that the government is managing at the moment is in flames, right? And there's only so much you can do as a spokesperson for a government that is failing on pretty much every single metric. And actually, health is probably one of the few areas where there has been a little bit of progress. Waiting lists haven't been great, but if you look at the opinion polls, actually health has sort of slightly declined as an issue. I think there is generally a sense that it's not quite as pressing of an issue as it was last July, but one of the ways they got around that was this £20 billion public sector pay rise, right? They just threw loads and loads of money unconditionally at the public sector. Temporarily, that stopped industrial action. And the second you stop industrial action, you are going to see some small improvement. You're getting people back to work. You're not having to pay locum pay in the NHS or contractor pay in other parts of the public sector. But unfortunately, because it wasn't linked to any demands, we haven't seen a productivity improvement. And because you've demonstrated to the public sector that the second you go on strike, you will get what you want. Now that we're coming back round to these pay reviews, we're facing similar problems where junior doctors and other parts of the public sector are threatening to go on strike.
There's been quite a lot of reaction to what Matthew said about pensioners. Michael says that Matthew has no idea how difficult it is living on a pension. I'm living on the state pension plus an old company pension, but it's barely covering my bills. Quite a lot of sentiment like that. What would you say to the pensioners who are concerned about what you're saying earlier on about the triple lock there, Matthew?
It's me paying their pension. There's this myth that you work hard and it all goes in a pot and then you get it. But it's the workers of today that are paying the pensions of tomorrow.
You're absolutely right, but nonetheless those people have paid their stamp, they've paid in their national insurance, they're entitled to a pension.
Yeah, but this is the same people that if you made tax optional, no one would pay it. There's this idea that I've wanted to give to my future. You've had to do it.
No, but they've put the money in.
I don't discount that, but again, what are me and you going to do? We've put in all of our lives and we won't get anything at the end of it. That's my issue. I'm thinking of not just me. I don't bother what happens to me. I put me out with the bins when I'm done. What bothers me is the fact that I want kids one day and I'm worried about the future they're going to have or the lack of one. And it's fine to say the triple lock was useful in some ways, but it should never have been done. It should have never been done. There's better ways to go about it. And it is not. I'm no issue with pensioners, by the way, not at all. But it is totally unsustainable, and we will all pay in the long run.
Elliot, quick reaction.
Yeah, I mean, listen. Some of the reasons why pensioners are struggling is because of very high energy costs, very high food price inflation, and also the fact that so many their wealth is tied up in property, and as a result of stamp duty is extremely costly for them to downsize and release some of that positive equity. So there are things, you know, your triple lock is unsustainable, we agree on that, but there are so many things you could be doing to ensure that energy bills come down, food bills come down, you can afford to actually move into a smaller property and release some of that equity that would make life as a pensioner much more comfortable, and would mean actually the issue of the triple lock, whether it goes up by pay or inflation, isn't actually the main issue.
Elliot, thank you very much. That's Elliot Keck there, who's head of campaigns at the Taxpayers Alliance. We also heard from Matthew Torbett, former Labour advisor on the debate desk, and West Reading as well, the health secretary. We're going to speak to the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp. He'll be with us after the news at 11. Remember, it's 11 rather than 12. I think. Yes, because the hour has gone back. Lots to discuss in the next hour. Stay with us here on Talk.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you very much to everybody who has been in touch with us, and a very warm welcome. It's now 11 o'clock, not 12 o'clock. If you've had a lie-in, that's because the hour has gone back. It's just gone 11 o'clock here on Talk, and indeed everywhere else in the United Kingdom. So thank you, and Greenwich Mean Time Zone. So thank you so much to everyone who's reacting to the West Reading interview. We're going to be speaking to Chris Philp at some stage fairly soon. He's running behind, as he usually is. So lots to discuss. We're talking about Kabatu, Hadesh Kabatu, the prisoner. He's now back behind bars, thankfully. We're talking about tax, we're talking about prisons, we're talking about pensioners as well. There are loads of people getting in touch about what Matthew Torbett had been saying about pensioners there. He thinks the triple lock should be scrapped. What do you think about that? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We will speak to the Shadow Home Secretary before too long, but in the meantime we're going to talk to you. So if you want to get your call in now, or at any stage between now and 1 o'clock, give me a ring, 0344 499 1000. You can text me 87222. with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. We're going to get some voice notes on the air very soon as well. 0344 499 1000 to send your voice notes in. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on that main number, of course, 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss between now and 1 o'clock here on Talk. Stay with us. Sorry I couldn't get more of your questions to Wes Streeting. Dan said corridor care is going through the roof. Another doctor strike looming. I did mention those two issues. Andy says it doesn't matter how many checks you put in place. If the paperwork says to release someone, that's what they do. So whoever did that paperwork, it's their fault. Talking about Hadesh Kabatu. If Wes Streeting talks about Wales, don't let him get away from the fact that Welsh Labour run health. Many feel it's worse than England. They also feel that they have already been let down by Labour and knew the rest of the country would finally feel this. Plenty of people talking about Wes Streeting and what he said. The prison system as well. Dave says the prison system is no longer fit for purpose. Sentences should repay debts to society through hard work and labour, not just locked up in cages. Sentences should be work served, not years caged. What the Wes, says Alan. Message for Streeting. 3 words that should never exist in the same sentence are humility, listen and starmer. Regarding Wes Streeting, another person says when he said reflecting the views of our members, what he failed to mention is that at least one of the block votes of the unions did not even put it to their members. They were told they would be receiving their vote. It's probably more than one. Labour is so out of touch with the average working person. That's Darren in South Wales. Business negotiation skills are lacking in the cabinet, says Ian. Wes hasn't got business negotiation skills. The rest of the cabinet not good at it, says Ian in Essex. What has Jess Phillips done more than any minister for the safety of women and children, says Fiona. Also, another person says, are they mocking us? More people care about immigration now? Yeah, because you filled the country with immigrants. Sunlight is the best disinfectant? Really? Is that why the data on immigrant crimes is constantly withheld? He doesn't believe Jess Phillips called the victims liars. Well, one of them is lying then. So is Jess Phillips a liar or are the victims? This guy's a walking cliche, commie, snake oil salesman, 100% persona, 0% authenticity, says Red. Has Streeting had a bang on the head? It just shows this pretend government ignores us, says Jane. The very people who pay their wages, they're absolutely loathsome, says Jane, who says she's an angry nana. Lots to discuss, and I want to discuss as well Lucy Powell, who is the new deputy leader of Labour, and she said that we should go more softly on migration. I mean, Wes Streeting called her a team player. She's not being a team player. I mean, she can say that, but she is factually not being a team player. If the first thing you do is criticise the Prime Minister, you're not doing what you're told. You're not being a team player. I'm glad she's not. I'm glad she's saying things that some people say will need to be said, some people will disagree with, because it's better to have a free and easy and free discourse, and we are, of course, the home of free speech. Let's speak to John in Newcastle. John's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. John, what would you like to say today?
Right, about this Lucy Powell, she's going to be the new deputy leader of the Labour Party. I thought when the Conservatives made a mess over 14 years, Labour before that had left a note saying there's nothing left in the bank. Yeah. So coming back to Labour wasn't really the greatest idea, but that's all we could do in this country at the present time. And so therefore now we come to this lady. She's talking about immigrants and blaming immigrants. But the point is that it's not anybody to blame but the British government of the day, whether it's Conservative Labour with the help of the Liberals. It's exactly that. It's not France. France has got nothing to do with it. In France, when you go to France, and I go on holiday sometimes, they find out that they don't have a hotel generally to stay in, the immigrants. They don't have 3 square meals a day and £38 spending money a week. They don't have all them facilities. And the only reason why basically the mass majority want to come here is for benefits. Nothing less than benefits. And as long as the British government give them benefits, then there's more and more will come. It's just disgusting, this country. Over the decades, I've seen some states, but not in the state we're in at the present time. And we've really... And now the Tories turn around and say they're going to get out of the European Court of Human Rights. They could have done this a decade ago. They could have done this a long time ago, but they didn't want to. We're ruled by people who in that parliament disgust me.
When you listen to Wes, John, when you listen to Wes Streeting, do you think he gets it? Do you think he understands how you live, what your concerns are?
Well, I believe that Wes Streeting is just speaking from a book. The reality is that we know that it's free. We know that the health service is free as to enter the dog test.
At the point of use anyway, but of course we pay through it through taxation, John, yeah.
But the reality is that who pays for it? The Russians? The Chinese? Of course not. It's the British taxpayer pays for the British health service. That's what he did. When he's talking about private situation, and I've been to France quite a few times, and it's got its problems, as you well know, as well as I do.
Sure.
But the reality is the health service is far superior to ours. 50 years ago, I went on a visit to a chap that I knew in France through sport, and he says, would you come and see my le temps pour moi? I says, yeah, and pourquoi, why? And he said, well, she's in hospital, hôpital. And pourquoi? I was amazed to find that it was a state hospital and it had better facilities than what we did in this country at the time.
Yeah, it's a very good point, John, and I do think the French health system is something that we need to look at. That social insurance model is something that so many other people have, and that's the question I always have with the NHS. If it's such an amazing system, if it is the envy of the world, then why does no other country have it in the same way? John, thank you. That's John in Newcastle there. Loads of people getting in touch with text. Removing the triple lock is another way of saying you want OAPs to be worse off relative to working people, says one person. Joanna in Salisbury. Hi, Cardi P. Hi, Joanna. Your guest said he would cut VAT on children's clothing. There's no VAT on children's clothing under 14 years. Another person says, I know Matthew Torbett has been genuine, and he says they just need to be honest with the people. And of course he's correct, but he'll never be allowed back into the Labour fold talking rubbish like that. Jason in the Lake District says, they say Wes Streeting is one of the shining lights in the Labour government. God help us, and God help us for the next 4 years. What an utter disgrace, says Jason. Lots more to come, including hopefully Chris Philp after the break. Stay with us here on Talk.
The police have their man. This guy's going to be detained, and now he will be deported to Ethiopia. What a sorry tale.
I mean, it's like something out of Inspector Clouseau, and now we'll see if he's actually deported or whether, like the so-called one in, one out, he just hops back on another boat back here again.
Yes, will lessons be learnt from this, Sir Michael?
Given that he went back several times to the prison saying, let me back in, I just wonder whether he went up to a policeman and said, look, could you please arrest me? I want to get back in.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has reacted to Hadish Kabatu, says he'll be deported as quickly as possible. Let's find out what the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, thinks of this mess. Chris, good morning.
Good morning, Peter.
What do you think of Hadish Kabatu? Thankfully back behind bars. Clearly the Metropolitan Police, Essex Police and British Transport Police have done their job, but the prison system did not.
Well, that's right. Obviously thankful he is now back in custody, but this should never have happened in the first place. And the Justice Secretary and Home Secretary should apologise to the British people for allowing this man to be released. He was obviously posing a danger to women and girls, initially in Essex and then later in East London when he was released. This is a terrible failing, and those ministers should apologise, and there should be a proper investigation into exactly what went wrong. This does also raise wider questions about the consequences of illegal immigration into the country. The first 9 months of this year have been the worst in history for illegal crossings of the Channel, and this man was, of course, one of those. And within just 8 days of arriving illegally by small boat, he sexually assaulted a 14-year-old girl. Sadly, this is not the only case. There are a number of other cases where illegal immigrants entering the country by small boat have committed sexual assault, rape, or even, in some cases, murder. And it does illustrate that this loss of border control is a public safety crisis as well as a border crisis, and we need the Labour government to start taking a much, much tougher approach to controlling our country's borders.
Given you were a Justice Minister and a Home Office Minister, surely you have some responsibility for the crisis in our prisons and the crisis in immigration.
Well, I was never Minister for Prisons, I should just make that clear. But look, this Labour have now been in charge for a year and a half almost, so they do have to take responsibility for the system they are presiding over. We do also need to get control of our borders, as I said a second ago, and we Conservatives set out a plan to do that under new leadership. Like Kemi was never Prime Minister, I was never Home Secretary, and we've got a new plan now which involves coming out of the ECHR, and that will enable us to remove all illegal arrivals within a week, either back to their country of origin if safe and possible, or to a safe third country if not. And that will make sure men like this do not end up in our communities posing a risk to women and girls. It will also deter crossings taking place, because if an illegal immigrant is in France thinking about crossing, and if they know they'll end up getting deported within a week, it's common sense tells you they won't bother attempting the crossing in the first place. A similar approach worked in Australia about 12 years ago, and actually a similar approach is working this year in the USA. That's why we proposed our plan a few weeks ago, but the Labour government, I think, are too weak to implement it.
There's a very interesting piece of footage that's going around at the moment. I expect you've seen it. This is in Tower Hamlets. Masked people who are Islamic extremists storming the town hall, bringing chaos to the streets. They were waving Palestinian flags, unleashing smoke bombs, vowing to honour the martyrs, terrified locals looking on. And many people worried that those people should have been arrested and that their protest was an illegitimate one. Have you seen this footage, and what do you think?
So I've not seen the footage, although I'll certainly go and look it up. From the description you've given, it sounds like they were committing things like criminal damage. It sounds like they might have been committing aggravated trespass, which is a criminal offence. And if they were glorifying the actions of Hamas, which is a proscribed, a banned terrorist organisation, that would be a criminal offence as well. So I can think of at least three possible criminal offences being committed. And if that is true, if those criminal offences were committed, they absolutely should have been arrested. And if any of those people were not British citizens, then frankly they should be deported, because people who commit criminal offences or who express support for extremism or terrorism have no place in this country, and if they're not British citizens, then they should be removed.
Rishi Sunak is in the Sunday Times today. He is the former Prime Minister, also former Chancellor. Of course, he's saying that taxes shouldn't go up, but he, of course, put taxes up. In fact, the taxes were put up to the highest level since the Second World War as a proportion of what the country makes by the Conservative government. He's now saying taxes shouldn't go up in the budget, which is due next month. There's loads of speculation around about a mansion tax, about a 2% rise in income tax. What would the Conservatives do?
Well, I think Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor, set this out together with Kemi at our party conference a few weeks ago, and the first step is to reduce public expenditure. The truth is we're spending too much money. We're spending more than we can afford as a country. So Mel, the Shadow Chancellor, set out, I think it was £47 billion worth of savings, about half of which came from the welfare system. There were other savings as well. And then he proposed to use about half of that to reduce in fact slightly over half, to reduce our deficit and start paying the debt back. and the other half to reduce taxes. And the tax that Kemi Badenoch identified was stamp duty on the main residential home. So that is the approach we'd like to see, reducing expenditure and using the money saved partly to reduce the deficit and ultimately pay down the debt, and partly to reduce taxation. What instead Rachel Reeves is going to do is she is not controlling public expenditure. It's going up and up and up, particularly welfare payments. That is going to drive taxes up and up and up, which then kills economic growth, causes jobs to be lost, and we end up on this sort of hamster wheel of doom.
The government you were part of, Chris, but the government you were part of put up taxes to the highest level as a proportion of what the country made since the Second World War. Can you really criticise Labour when they are raising taxes, when they have public expenditure at such a high rate? I agree with you. I agree it should go down, but you know, you haven't put your money where your mouth was in 14 years in government.
Well, I mean, first of all, I mean, across the whole 14 years, a number of taxes did go down. And remember, corporation tax was cut by, I think it was George Osborne.
You added dozens of new taxes.
And don't forget, don't forget that Rishi Sunak had to deal with the aftermath of COVID, which had a very serious effect on the economy, and we spent hundreds of billions of pounds keeping the country going during COVID with the furlough scheme and all that stuff your viewers will remember, which was expensive and had to get paid for. But look, I'll be honest with you, I think the tax burden was higher than I would have wanted it to be perfectly honest, Peter. I'll be honest with you there. But the only way you can get taxes down is to control and reduce spending, particularly on welfare. We're paying, I think it's 6.5 million people of working age benefits. That's just unsustainable. I think every day something like 5,000 new people go onto welfare. We just can't afford that. And unless that is dealt with, taxes keep going up. And that is the difference between Labour and the Conservatives. We have a plan to get this spending back under control, whereas Labour do not have a plan to do that, and our taxes are going to go up. And when taxes go up, what happens? Companies go and invest somewhere else. They go off to America. Individuals leave the country and go to places like Dubai. Jobs are lost. We've seen unemployment go up significantly under this Labour government. I think it's gone up by at least a couple of 100,000 from memory. Big increase in unemployment. And if Rachel Reeves puts up taxes even more, as she looks very likely to do, that whole cycle is going to repeat. And we're going to be back here in a year's time with higher spending, higher taxes, lower growth, and this awful doom loop will just keep on repeating.
Should parliamentary time be used to debate whether Prince Andrew should be stripped of his titles, whether he should move out of Royal Lodge? Is that a good use of parliamentarians' time, do you think?
Well, I think, frankly, Prince Andrew should himself just voluntarily deal with all of that, give up the titles, all of them, and move out of that very large house or mini palace that he's living in. He should do that voluntarily, I think, because he has brought, frankly, disgrace on himself, the royal family and the country, and he should do the right thing by stepping back from all of that, to be honest.
I want to ask you about Jess Phillips as well. She's had a shocker of a week, and there are many people with the grooming gangs, rape gangs inquiry who say they no longer have faith in her. Do you think she should step down?
Yes, she ought to resign. She's lost the confidence of a number of the survivors, Fiona Goddard and 4 others, who say that they will not rejoin the survivors advisory panel until Jess Phillips resigns. And because she's lost their confidence, I think she should resign, yes, to get the process back on track. Of course, this was an inquiry into the rape gang scandal the Labour government never wanted in the first place. Jess Phillips spent the first few months of this year arguing we didn't need to have an inquiry. When Kemi and I first called for one back in January, Keir Starmer smeared us, saying we were jumping on a far-right bandwagon, which was a disgraceful thing to say, and in fact it was what led to this scandal getting covered up in the first place. So the Labour Party, the Labour government, have a terrible track record on this issue already, and the fact they've now lost the confidence of a number of the survivors just compounds the problem, and Jess Phillips, I'm afraid, should resign.
What do you think about how the Conservatives were badly wiped out in the Welsh Assembly election this week, down to less than 2% of the vote? Clearly you're not making an impression in South Wales. The Conservatives, of course, have never been strong there, but Reform UK have done very, very well in that election, coming second, won, of course, by Plaid Cymru.
Look, so as you say, that is not an area where the Conservatives have historically been particularly strong. It's been a Labour seat continuously for, goodness knows, 100 years or something like that. And Plaid Cymru won the seat, not Reform. Look, it was a tough election for us as well. I'm not going to hide that. But I think people wanted to register a protest in that by-election, as they often do, and voted for Plaid Cymru and to a lesser extent other parties as well. Look, we've had a bit of a reset, I would say, at our party conference in the sense we had a lot of new policies that we announced, and I think that lays the foundations for the future. Policies on getting spending down. We talked about cutting stamp duty, a plan to end illegal migration that we published, plans to come out of the Climate Change Act so we can reduce people's household bills by £200. It was a real, I would say, really laid the foundations for the future. So I think we face the future with a lot more confidence and optimism than in the past. It will take time, Peter, to be honest. It won't be immediate. But those foundations, I think, have been laid now for the future.
In an earlier
we do have detailed and credible plans, which Reform don't.
In an earlier interview, you didn't, with another broadcaster, you didn't know who the leader of the Welsh Conservatives was. You were asked 6 times. Do you know who it is now?
Darren Millar.
Thanks,
Who's
Chris.
the leader in the Senate, to be precise.
OK. Thank you very much. That's Chris Philp there. He is the Shadow Home Secretary joining us on Talk. Appreciate your time this morning. There was a big issue. There was another broadcaster asked him 6 times who it was. He now knows who it is. Dave in South Gloucester says Chris Philp is doing what all Tories do. Words, words, words. Some people believe the words of Starmer and voted him in. The Tories spoke words and made promises over 14 years and did not deliver. Why should we believe the Tories? Because they come out and what we want to hear. But why should we trust them after all those years of broken promises, says Dave in South Gloucester. Loads on prisons as well. Of course, we know Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, has said Hadish Kabatu could be deported quickly as possible. She would be deported as quickly as possible. I'd like to thank the Met, Essex and British Transport Police for their tireless work around the clock to hunt down and arrest Hadish Kabatu. She said he will be deported as quickly as possible. Paul Jones has been in touch. He says, I understand housing prisoners on release so they don't end up in the streets committing more crime, but they can't go to halfway houses because they're mixing with their own, which isn't good for them, but they can't take homes from the homeless either. Paul, that's a really, really good point, and actually I do think that there's a lot to think about actually with prisoners being released. Releasing them at 5 o'clock on a Friday is a really stupid idea as well, because who's waiting at the gates? It's the drug dealers who say, do a little job for us, we'll give you a bed for the night. They haven't got any access to services, whether it's housing, whether it's dealing with people who can help them get a job, whatever it is. So not releasing prisoners on Friday was something that I said we shouldn't do, and many people said we shouldn't do when I was at the Ministry of Justice, and I think that practice has now ended. Another person says, I like Matthew Torbett, who we had on a little bit earlier on, but if you can rehabilitate prisoners, great, but I believe that prison should be a completely miserable and awful experience. So very bad that you never want to go back. No gyms, no gangs, no collaborating with other prisoners. 24 hours a day in a cell, 3 meals a day. You do your business in the bucket and get 30 minutes a day to go out and empty it and clean up. So bad that you never want to go back. In the countries where the punishment is the hardest, the harshest, the crime is less. Barry in Morecambe says, looks like the tax-paying working person yet again is to pay for Labour's failure if the lifestyle of a working person is to depreciate by 2%. Would it be fair to add up all the benefits, free TV, dentists, prescriptions, rents, rates, it goes on, and deduct 2% from their benefits, the benefits of people who are getting them? Do we have any voice notes just at this exact moment? We'll get some of those after the break. We'll play some voice notes for you. So thank you so much to everybody sending them in. 0344 499 1000. Lots to discuss here on Talk. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So this is the clock I usually look at, which is in front of me, but it's wrong. So it says 12:30 when it's actually 11:30. I'm going to try in the next break to change it, because obviously no one behind the scenes cares that I know it's the right time or not. It is 29 minutes past 11 rather than 29 minutes past 12. Of course, the hour went back last night. I hope you had a lovely lie-in. Lots of people getting in touch, including Andrew, who says, I normally like listening to Matthew Torbett, but he's being a typical soft lefty today. If someone reoffends, it doesn't mean prison didn't work. It means he's a wrong 'un and should have been in longer, says Andrew. Gareth says, I was in the prison service for 25 years. The process to release a prisoner is a system. The issue is that starts with paperwork issued from head office and the courts. If the releasing officer sees a stamp and signature, they will release. You could, and I did, keep someone back for checks. However, that is a question to see if officers have the courage to do that. Human rights, etc., come into play at that point. Gareth, it's a very, very good point. And actually, I was sent a very interesting piece of information yesterday by someone who works in the criminal justice system, actually, about the amount of money we pay prisoners who are kept in too long. They get hundreds of pounds of payments if they're kept in after the date that they were meant to be released on. Right, let's get some voice notes now. Nick has been in touch on West Streeting.
Good morning, Peter. It's Nick from Loughborough. I can't get over what I've just heard from West Streeting. The man is in shameless denial. And if ever there was a poster boy for why this government is doing so badly, it's West Streeting this morning on your show spouting the tripe that he came out with. The man is in complete and utter denial, and it's shameless. He knows he knows that we know he's lying as well, but yet he still lies. I'm appalled by them. Let's have them out as quickly as possible, Peter. Peter, have a lovely Sunday.
Thank you very much indeed, Nick. We missed you yesterday. I know Nick usually sends a voice note in. We have lots and lots of voice notes, but Nick usually sends one in. I think he had a problem with his phone. He texted in. But listen, very, very fair points. And yes, Darren has sent one in as well. Darren wants to talk about rape gangs. Here's what Darren says.
Good morning, Peter. Darren from Warsaw. Listening to West Street in there, in particular about St. Jessup Phillips, all I can say is it was a good job I'd got a bucket next to me, because it's just vomit-inducing. They are a disgrace. The whole lot of them, and West Streeting ain't no better. If he's the best Labour have got to offer, well, we know what Labour have to offer. They're a disgrace. Great show, mate.
Thanks, Darren. Appreciate that. Stuart has a voice note on migration.
Hi, Stuart from Edinburgh. Quite a bit of Labour MPs saying the one in and one out will work. If they give it a chance, eventually they'll realise it's costing them money. As quite rightly said, it's costing us money that we worry about. And why should one in and one out be beneficial? Because that means you've still got to take one in. The only time you should take one in is if it's beneficial to our country, i.e. he provides a service, a job that we definitely need. And he's a proven doctor and things like that, yes. Apart from that, no.
Thank you very much indeed, Stuart, for that. And thank you also to Jason in the Lake District, who says, great interview with Wes Streeting. I can't see him wanting to come back on soon. Well, in fairness to Wes Streeting, he does come on our show. A lot of cabinet ministers don't. Fair play to him. Great panel earlier, great mature debate. Also, you're looking very smart today, Peter. Have you got a court appearance after the show? No, I don't actually, although there are only 4 occasions on which I wear ties. Well, 5 job interviews, I suppose, but I haven't had one of those in a while, which is weddings, funerals, court appearances, and meeting royalty. I did have a court appearance once, actually. I was taking someone to the small claims court who owed me money, and then I won the case, so I have a 100% record as a prosecutor. Breaking news, and 2 men have been arrested following a robbery at the Louvre Museum, which saw thieves escape with priceless jewellery, including part of the French crown jewels. So that has happened, and they've been arrested over the Louvre jewellery heist that happened. Was that last weekend that happened, the Louvre? I think it was. Last Sunday, yes it was. Thank you to Chris, my producer, who has a great memory, but an inability to fix clocks. In fact, we have someone behind the scenes who's a very wise young man called Luke Thomas Vincent, and I think I'm going to deputise advise him to look, can you come in and fix the clock, please? Can we get you to fix the clock? Because it says 12:33 and it's not, Luke, it's not 12:33, it's 11:33. Can you sort that? Yep, thank you, good man. Luke Thomas Vincent is a very, very wise young man, and often steals all the biscuits, so I'm afraid that we will be withholding the biscuits until he sorts the clock. Right then, Andy is in Hertfordshire and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Andy, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good show as always. I was listening to part of your interview with Wes Streeting, and I don't know what you think, but do you think the Labour Party don't understand, or they're deliberately ignoring what people want?
I think it's a bit of both, maybe. I think they'll say it's all very difficult, but they'll also say that they want to do things their way. They've got a big mandate, they've got a big, they've got a big vote, and they can do what they want, essentially. But the fact is, they're not listening to the people. They're not listening to the changes. And actually, maybe we should give Wes Streeting a bit of credit for saying that the by-election that happened in Wales for the Welsh Assembly this week was a bit of a wake-up call, because it should be a wake-up call. He's right in that, at least, is he not, Andy?
Yeah, maybe. I just think with everything that's going on, the amount of mistakes that are being made, surely somebody should be saying somewhere, hang on, you've lost the by-election.
Yeah.
You actually then, there's a criminal who actually shouldn't have been here, who I think should have been deported, is then let out, however you want to call it, by accident, whatever, incompetency, whichever it is. We're then praising the police for finding him. We shouldn't have had to have found him in the first place.
I mean, it's a very, very good point.
He should either still be locked up, or he should be deported. Now what are we going to do? Our taxpayers' money, we're now going to put this guy back in prison. What? This is our money.
Yeah.
We're giving the government the money to actually go and do what we're asking them to do.
You're right to be angry, Andy, because and we pay a load of tax, and all we're asking for is the country to work, stuff to happen, prisoners to be locked up, the hospitals to treat us, the roads to not have potholes in them. And actually, it seems the more complicated the world becomes, the more basic the requests come from people like us, Andy, who just say, why not just spend our taxes doing the basic things right?
I mean, we had the other thing the other week where the guy said who'd been, I can't, if it was the one of the people from the hotels, he asked to go home.
Yeah.
But we're going to put him up and pay for him. Well, then send him home.
Yeah.
If he wants to go home, send him home.
Listen, all the points you make are perfectly reasonable, and we should say to that person, right, we'll get you on a plane tomorrow, or as soon as practical. Andy, listen, thanks very much for your thoughts. That's Andy in Hertfordshire there. Let's talk about another problem that's vexing the government, indeed vexing Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, and that is the salaries, the conditions, the pay, and indeed the proposed strikes of junior doctors. Roy Lilly is with us, former NHS Trust Chairman. Roy, I was speaking to Wes Streeting a little bit earlier on. I don't know if you saw that interview, but I said, like, you capitulated the time before. So clearly, the issue is that they expect you to capitulate again. What do you make of all of this?
I think he's handled it badly, Peter. I really do. I mean, he gave them a whopping great pay rise. I think he thought he bought them off. And you and I think, had a telephone conversation at the time, and I said he's done a 2-year deal. And this really needs to be a 3-year deal, because they've come back for more. The amount that they were asking for couldn't be delivered in 1 year, but I think it could have been delivered over 3 years. Well, we got to the 2-year period and it's cut off, and now they've come back for more. Look, he's going to have to do something on the money. These doctors, these aren't the kind of old-fashioned Dr. Finlay doctor that, we're used to. These are young doctors. They've got careers. They want a job and a life. They don't just want a career forever. And they are treated pretty abysmally, and they can make out a case for the numbers. I mean, I don't know whether he's talking to them or not. He's been talking to them and got nowhere. He's done, well, there is a deal in the offing to make their rotas a bit more manageable, a bit more human. And some of the softer stuff around parking and meals and sleeping on and on call and all the rest, all that kind of soft stuff can be done. And there is now a 10-point plan that's been sent out to most of the hospitals to try and sort that out. It's just ordinary, industrial relations and looking after your staff. But he's reversed himself into a corner now. I think he's banking on the fact that the public won't support the junior doctors, or whatever they're called now, the resident doctors.
Resident doctors, yeah.
Resident doctors. I just don't think they care. I just think they've got their heads down. They're saying we want this money thing sorted out, and we're going to go on strike. And all of the sort of normal stuff that you would expect to be done in industrial relations is not done. I mean, Streeting is, he's all over the paper saying, I'm going to be tough and I'm going to face them all down and I'm going to this, that and the other. And none of that is going to work, because they'll just say, well, good luck with that, but we're just not going to come to work. So I think he's handled it badly. My advice to him would be to get what we call in the trade a white knight in, somebody that's neutral but respected by both sides, to sit down, draw a line and say, right, forget the past. We are where we are. What have we got to do to sort this out? Because I just don't think he's going to be able to do it.
But they will say, of course, just give us more money. I mean, they know that he can get the money if he really, really needs it. But what about the public in all of this? What's the effect going to be? Because we know in the last doctor strike, people died because there was not the cover that needed to be there. I mean, will the public sympathy evaporate on all of this? I don't see a huge amount of sympathy coming from our viewers and listeners who are reacting to this story, for example.
They won't, but the doctors aren't daft, Peter. These are very sensible, articulate, very intelligent people. They know that they won't carry public opinion with them, and they don't care. I mean, I think what they're hoping is that they'll deflect some of this angst onto the government as a whole and look at the government's competence in, not only the NHS, but all the other stuff that, you've been broadcasting this morning, they've been making a mess of. And they'll just say, this is an incompetent government. And I think they will gather some support with that. But as far as the public supporting them, I just don't think they care. They're just saying, this is what we want, this is what we're going to try and do. As far as the impact is concerned, well, the NHS is getting pretty good at handling strikes. And so the last time round, I mean, they did actually manage to struggle through with a lot of the elective work being done, and it had a minimal impact. However, this strike is going to be in November. We all know what the winter means as far as the NHS is concerned. And, it's just going to get the NHS chock-a-block again. And, of course, it will have a big impact on waiting lists. And let's face it, the government was elected to do three things: sort out the economy, sort out migration, and sort out waiting lists. None of those three, from this programme this morning yourself, none of those three things are happening. And that's the problem.
You're absolutely right. There's a very good cartoon that a viewer has sent me about patient choice, and the receptionist is asking the patient, would you prefer to hear your operations being cancelled by email, post, text message, phone, WhatsApp, Google Chat, or all of the above?
Oh dear. I mean, it's black comedy, and it's horrendous if you're on a waiting list. But I mean, that absolutely encapsulates it. Absolutely does. Gets it bang right. And of course, Streeting made a big thing this morning about getting 600,000 operations done in the private sector. Well, good luck to the people in the private sector, and I'm pleased they got their operation. But in the scheme of things, where there's 7.5 million people waiting, almost as many people coming on to the waiting list every month as coming on the waiting list, that it's plateauing. I mean, it's neither here nor there, really. And of course, the money flows out of the NHS and into the pockets and profits and dividends for the companies that are doing. Good luck to them. But it's not really how we want to run the NHS, I don't think.
Roy, as always, thank you. That's Roy Lilly there, former NHS Trust Chairman. Appreciate your contribution to the programme this morning. Graham has said, I've just had an idea, I'll come back to that in a second. John in Birmingham says, Matthew Torbett resents paying pensioners out of his own pocket. Can start by having his parents and his in-laws' pensions stop, or are they rich enough to no longer hear that doesn't matter to them? Graham says, is the Home Office going to deport the Ethiopian prisoner as soon as possible? Why don't they do this before he was let out, says Graham in Bushy. Well, he was on his way to be deported, in fairness, but nonetheless, absolute scandal and fiasco in terms of what happened. Susan wants to talk about Lucy Powell. She says, Lucy Powell needs to clarify what she means by a softer stance on immigration. Would she like someone living near her home, or maybe offer them a spare room in her house? You watch her back pedal so fast she would fall over. They're all the same, make these virtue signalling comments as long as it's only the plebs who have to suffer the consequences. I'm absolutely sick of the lot of them. Jane says, well done, talk for getting a cabinet minister. That was producer Chris, by the way. Well done, talk for getting a cabinet minister. I only heard a few minutes, but what I heard, he was talking crap, says Jane. So thank you for that. Mitch says, if Shabana Mahmood can't deport this man back to Ethiopia, she should be deporting many more. And on prisons as well, many people getting in touch. What about protecting the public from thieves and scum? Lock them up if you don't like it. It's that tough, says Steve in Ipswich. The population is increasing by the day, therefore per person there are fewer police to protect them, says Jane. And Graham has been in touch about the clocks. I've had an identical clock for many years. It's self-adjusting. This one isn't, Graham, let me tell you. Yours must have lost the signal somehow, whereas mine is 100% reliable, says Graham. Well, mine isn't 100% reliable because it's now 53 seconds slow. So it says 11:43 and 10 seconds. So Luke Thomas Vincent, I'm afraid, has failed us. Lots more to talk about, including that horrendous footage in East London, Tower Hamlets. We'll talk about that, as well as the prisoner who has been mistakenly released, now captured again. Stay with us here on Talk.
The police have their man. This guy's going to be detained, and now he will be deported to Ethiopia. What a sorry tale.
I mean, it's like something out of Inspector Clouseau, and now we'll see if he's actually deported or whether, like the so-called one in, one out, he just hops back on another boat back here again.
Yes, will lessons be learnt from this, Sir Michael?
Given that he went back several times to the prison saying, let me back in, I just wonder whether he went up to a policeman and said, look, will you please arrest me? I want to get back in.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Maddie's been in touch on Twitter and says, just a reminder, Labour didn't win with a big mandate. Their vote share was just over 30%. I think it was 33%. That leaves a lot of people disenfranchised. It's their first past the post voting system that gave them a majority in the House of Commons. Yeah, I don't think any government since the war, actually, in fact, even before then, maybe the 30s, has had more than 50% of the votes because of the way our system works. But Maddie, listen, thank you for that. A good reminder. Jennifer Jarman says Phillips talking as if their policy to leave the European Court of Human Rights is fresh. Farage has been saying this for years. It's in their immigration policy, which the Tories have copied. Not knowing the name of the leader in Wales following a by-election shows how out of touch the Tories are. And another person says, I was shocked by Matthew Torbett's comments this morning about the triple lock and OAPs suggesting they sell assets. He ignored taxpayers' money funding illegal immigrants daily. Deportation is cheaper than supporting those who enter our country illegally, that person says. Well, I want to talk about Hadish Kabatu, the Ethiopian who was let out of prison. I also want to talk about very concerning footage from Tower Hamlets, actually, in East London as well. A number of Islamists, masked people gathering, talking about celebrating the life of martyrs and so on. We'll talk about that with the public order expert John Burrows. He's a retired PSNI officer. He's now an elected member of the Northern Ireland Assembly for the Ulster Unionists as well. John, great to talk to you this morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you, Peter. Good morning.
Hadish Kabatu, the police have got him back behind bars, and good for them. How on earth would this have happened? I mean, it's just a total fiasco, isn't it?
It's a catastrophic systems failure by the prison. You have a very high-risk prisoner, someone convicted of sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl, and a range of other really disturbing behaviour, approaching girls in Pizza Hut days after he arrived in the country. And also someone who is a flight risk because he was, of course, being deported. And yet there seems to be just a sloppy procedures by the prison service that have resulted in this man being inexplicably released onto the streets. So it's hard enough to get people arrested, convicted and deported. And then when we manage it as a country, the prison service lets him out onto the street.
Yeah, no, it's a very fair point. And I mean, what needs to happen now? Clearly there's a full investigation. The one officer has been suspended. But I mean, I spoke to a couple of prison governors, actually, former prison governors, over the last 48 hours or so. And they have said, you know, there's a sort of 6 or 7 step process to actually get someone back. And we have these sort of farcical, I mean, it is farcical is the right word to use, because this guy was asking and saying, I don't think I should be let out. He went back a number of times. He hung around the prison for, what was it, 45 minutes to an hour, saying, essentially saying, I don't think I should have been let out. I mean, someone should have smelt a rat at that stage, shouldn't they?
Look, if it wasn't so serious, it would be a comedy programme, a skit combination of porridge crossed with faulty towers. I mean, look, what's going on? There's clearly systemic problems there. That prison had an issue before where they released someone incorrectly. So there are clearly issues of system, and there are clearly issues of individual responsibility. I will say this, though, in fairness, Peter, what I don't want to see is a junior member of staff thrown under a bus if there's been a failure here of an institutional level. So I think at the very least what we need is transparency, a swift investigation, find out what went wrong, hold whoever needs held accountable, but then this must be learned from. And it's really important that the prison services in Northern Ireland and Scotland also feed into that review so that there's learning right across the United Kingdom. Because these mistakes can happen again. As you say, there's a series of checks take place, and then if all of them have failed, and you actually have the person himself saying, I don't think I should be getting released. So this is a catastrophic systems failure. And I have to say this, Peter, if that individual had went on and committed another sexual assault, we could this morning be sitting in a situation where the country was in flames, because the tension is there, and this would have been another example of the state failing the population. Of course, that would be unjustifiable, but that's the reality of the world we live in.
Speaking of public order, and you're a public order expert, you're a professional standards expert as well. Actually, let me ask you about professional standards first, then I'll ask you about the public order point. On professional standards, I mean, how fearless do you have to be? When you were investigating people in the PSNI, for example, who'd done the wrong thing, dealing with professional standards, I mean, trust in our institutions, trust in the PSNI, in which I have a very high level of trust, it must be said, more than any other police force in the United Kingdom. It's tricky, isn't it? You must face roadblocks, you must face obfuscation. I just wonder, for the person who's looking into the prison service, what advice you would give them to make sure this investigation is done properly and the right person or people are held accountable, rather than, as you say, a junior person. A junior person may well have been made a mistake, they may well need to be held to account, but if there's a systems failure, clearly that goes much higher up the chain.
Absolutely, and whoever does this review has to be someone who has a track record of being fearless, and you've got to approach this without fear or favour, and you've got to follow the truth and the evidence wherever it takes you. And I think you have to balance that bit of compassion with human beings who can make an error, but also be relentless in identifying the real cause of the problem. And if that goes right to the top, it goes right to the top. It's one thing to make a mistake, but if there's been previous mistakes that have not been learned from, that to me is a much more culpable thing. And that's where managers may well have to be held to account. So I would say to whoever it is, be fearless. Don't take no for an answer. Whenever you're given information, accept nothing, believe nobody, and confirm everything, and keep asking questions. Because people's reputations are fiercely protected, but actually the person who's pursuing this inquiry needs to put the reputation of the prison service, of the state, of those big institutions first. The public need to have trust that there is competence and transparency, because if you don't, you actually end up with the scenes of disorder and chaos that we have occasionally in England now. So they have a very important job. They should do it without fear or favour, and they should be supported at the very top of the government in that pursuit.
Speaking of those scenes of public disorder, let's have a look just on the screen. I'll describe it for people who are listening on the radio, which is the majority of people. There were, in Tower Hamlets in East London, masked Islamists storming the town hall, bringing chaos to the streets, waving Palestinian flags, unleashing smoke bombs, vowing to honour the martyrs as some terrified locals looked on. I've seen footage as well of people saying we're all on the same side here, and one of the Islamists saying we're not on the same side. This is a really serious number of people here who are doing some sort of protest, and many people looking on as well in Tower Hamlets. This footage is going round the internet. It happened apparently yesterday. You can see some of the smoke bombs there. There are some people talking about Gaza who are not involved in the disorder particularly, but it's hard to tell exactly. Someone's saying jobs, homes and services for all. So there seems to be a sort of left-wing protest on one side and then Islamists on the other side of this. From what we see, from what it appears to be from this footage, of course we don't know exactly who's involved or exactly what they want, but this happened in Tower Hamlets yesterday. You can see a number of men praying there and praying in the direction of Mecca. John, what do you make of this, and how would you deal with it from a public order point of view?
Well, they're very disturbing scenes. First of all, there are clear powers that say that the police service can require anyone to remove face masks in a public place, in a public order situation. So if I was there at the time, I'd be ensuring that people were unmasked. That is vital. The second of all is that pyrotechnics should not be used, and there shouldn't be those intimidating scenes. I suppose it depends in terms of how much indication the police had of this, but it will have been organised. You don't bring that amount of people onto the streets prepared in the way they are without organisation, and that's why the police have to have their lines of intelligence. It's why they need to be monitoring social media accounts of these far lefts and Islamist groups, so that they're actually following them and are able to preempt them. But now that this has happened, there needs to be a swift investigation, because offences will have been committed. And what you're saying there is intimidatory. And I get a point from constituents now that I used to hear from people when I was a police officer. There will be people today, not today, it's Sunday, but tomorrow, who receive a fine in the post because their car has been caught straddling a box junction, or went just over the speed limit. And there's zero tolerance for those people. They're hammered. And yet sometimes we have scenes in this country of impunity around people who don't share our values and people who just do their own thing. And the police need to deal with these things swiftly. And I know it's a long answer, but if they are unable to deal with it quickly at the time, now they need to announce a swift and fearless investigation, bring people to justice, and start actually getting a better insight into these groups that are acting in this way.
It's interesting you mentioned that box junction there as well. There is a particular box junction that has raised £450,000 in 8 months. We're going to be talking about it a little bit later in the programme. And the fact that, you know, 30 British people a day are arrested for non-crime hate incidents, claims, some claims on that that have gone around the internet as well. But listen, it's interesting to see what has happened and what your thoughts on that are. You are now an elected politician in Northern Ireland, John, and congratulations for that. Sorry, co-opted, but I'm sure you'll be elected soon, for the Ulster Unionist Party. I know there's been the new President of Ireland has been elected, Catherine Connolly. Now, she is on the left. She has talked about a Jewish conspiracy previously. I'm quite concerned at her election, to be honest, John. From your perspective as an elected member of the Northern Ireland Assembly, what do you think?
Well, I think it will cause people some concern. I think there are a number of factors. Heather Humphreys, who was her opponent, who is a Protestant from the Republic of Ireland and actually a nationalist, she reported receiving huge levels of sectarian abuse during the campaign. And we often focus on sectarianism in Northern Ireland, and actually it shows there's still a real deep problem in the Republic of Ireland that we need to recognise and accept. And I suppose it's a bit like the far left. Often the crimes and intolerance of the far left are ignored in our media, and the focus is on the right. In relation to the new president, look, we have to accept the democratic wishes, of course, of the people of the Republic of Ireland, but she does have extreme views. It will, I think, be a chill factor in the island of Ireland for relationships, and we will watch with great interest. But it is concerning when we have anti-Semitism, to have a president now that says that Hamas are part of the fabric of Palestine. Hamas, a group that throws people off buildings, a group that tortures people, a group that commits sexual crimes. The language he uses is inappropriate. We will watch very carefully on our conduct.
John, thank you very much on all those topics. John Burrows, retired PSNI officer, former public order commander, now a member of the Assembly for the Ulster Unionists in Northern Ireland. Thank you to him. What do you think of what he said? 0344 499 1000. Mag says, why on earth would this not dealt with? What on earth are the authorities thinking about allowing this to happen? The whole thing was abhorrent and should never have happened. And on a slightly lighter note, Mark says, don't worry about your clock being 50 seconds out, 53 seconds out actually. It's going to be tricky getting the news junction because the clock is wrong. While listening on your smart speakers, about a 2 minute or so delay anyway. I hope that all the time announcements are slightly out anyway. Well, listen, the news is coming up in, I think, about 32 seconds, 33 seconds, yes. So I'll keep talking until then. That's what I gotta do. But it's much easier when you have a clock that's correct. But I'll stop mooning about that. I would be very interested to see how the clock issue goes with Julia Hartley-Brewer tomorrow, let me tell you. Norman Baker will be joining us after the news. He is author of And What Do You Do? What the Royal Family Didn't Want You to Know About Prince Andrew facing the humiliation, this historic Commons debate as well. That is going to be happening. The Liberal Democrats wanted to have, and should it happen? Let us know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us because, as you know, that's right there. That's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. This is Talk. It's just gone 12 o'clock. Lots to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. Thanks for your company this lunchtime. We're talking about Hadish Kabatu. He has been brought back into prison, the sex offender at the Bell Hotel who was sent to prison and then released from prison as he was on his way to a detention centre. That was a complete fiasco. We're also talking about Prince Andrew because he faces humiliation, a historic Commons debate. That is the Liberal Democrats who want that. Former Liberal Democrat Minister, actually, Norman Baker, is going to join us in a second. He's an author and sceptic of the Royals. We'll talk as well about Britain's most lucrative yellow box junction. It raised £450,000 in 8 months. Yes, really. And Mike Neville will be joining us a bit later on Hadish Kabatu as well. As always, I want your thoughts on all the issues we're talking about today, whether it's Prince Andrew, whether it's Hadish Kabatu, whether it's that footage we just showed you a few minutes ago of what happened in Tower Hamlets, the Islamists on the streets there and nobody doing a single thing about them. We've already had a couple of voice notes about that and messages. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute please, 0344 499 1000. That's the number for phone calls and the number for WhatsApp text messages as well. Lots to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. I'm also here all week on Drive between 4 and 7, so I'll be back tomorrow at 4 as well. Loads to discuss then and today here on Talk. Well, thanks everybody who has been in touch on all sorts of issues. Terry and Slough talking about the clocks going back today, but I wish I could turn them back to the 1980s when we had Mrs Thatcher, a Prime Minister with a backbone and guts. Love her or hate her, she would have stopped these small boats invading our country. Dawn in Chelmsford. Our country is broken, Peter. Nothing works as it should. On top of this, we should have the frightening employment rights bills in the wings and a no doubt destructive budget looming. Paul says on the left believe the illegal immigrants deserve to come to, on the left people believe the illegal immigrants deserve to come to the country, and that's their right, but to say they shouldn't be held in camps until they have been screened is just putting the comfort of illegal immigrants over the safety of women and young girls. How can they justify that opinion? Roy Lilly was on earlier as well talking about the doctors' strike. What do you think about that? Brian says, come on Roy Lilly, get real. These doctors are really not so hard done by. Most of them work a couple of days a week for the private sector alongside their NHS job, often doubling their NHS salaries. They are purely greedy and do not care how much damage they do to the NHS and patients. And Mark's been in touch about the clock issues. Luke has been asked again to sort the clock. The clock is not right. It's Julie Hartley-Brewer I worry about. She will want the clock to be absolutely accurate, let me tell you. Mark says, don't worry about your clock being 50 seconds or so out when listening on your smart speaker. It's about a 2-minute or so delay. And someone else said that I sometimes say even a stop clock tells the right time twice a day. Well, actually, this clock will be accurate at some stage, except it won't because it's 53 seconds wrong. But Luke's on the case, and that's the main thing. Perhaps not the biggest issue facing the country today. One that's certainly facing the country, and indeed our parliamentarians, is Prince Andrew facing humiliation at a historic Commons debate. This is a pincer movement from Parliament and Buckingham Palace to strip him of his dukedom, the Dukedom of York, of course, and banish him from his 30-room mansion, or as Chris Philp called it earlier on, a small palace. I'm not sure what a small palace is, but anyway. MPs are set to discuss Andrew's future, defying years of convention that usually prevents politicians criticising the royal family. Well, one politician, or former politician certainly, who has criticised the royal family on many occasions and is about to again, is Norman Baker, former Home Office Minister, former Liberal Democrat MP and author of And What Do You Do? What the Royal Family Don't Want You to Know. Norman, thank you for joining me on the programme this afternoon. How are you?
Fine, thanks, Peter.
Is it right that your party, the Liberal Democrats, or your former party perhaps, are debating this in Parliament? Is this something that parliamentarians should be spending time doing? We've heard about all sorts of big issues, human rights issues, police issues this week, the rape gangs inquiry. Is this what parliamentary time should be used to do you think?
Well, it's not one or the other, to be honest with you. I mean, the Parliament has a habit of finishing quite early and the MPs being sent home when there's no more business. So there's plenty of time in Parliament to debate a whole range of issues, including the ones you've highlighted at the top of your programme. But the reality is that the royal family has not been subject to proper accountability. It's not been subject to parliamentary scrutiny. It's been largely exempt from the Freedom of Information Act. And the consequence of that is that the royal family has become rather arrogant and out of touch, I'm afraid, on this issue in particular, but other issues as well, including finance, which I set out in my book. And we need to make sure that the royal family in this country is held to account in the same way as royal families are all across Europe.
And how do we do that? What is, I mean, you mentioned the Freedom of Information Act, you mentioned other things. I mean, we do have bits of information that come into the public domain. I know you pore over them on an annual basis, Norman, but what should we have? What should be absolutely clear? What's the level of transparency we should have?
Oh, well, first of all, MPs, when they're elected, have to take an oath to an unelected person, namely the King, and not just the King, but his heirs and successors, which, by the way, includes Prince Andrew, who is number 8 in line to the throne, excuse me, and Prince Harry as well. That's a nonsense. And in other European monarchies, the King or Queen takes an oath to Parliament, to the democratic institutions. We got the wrong way around. We've still got an imperial monarchy like the Russian Tsar or the Kaiser in Germany. It used to be 100 years ago. That's where we are. So we need to change all that. Then we need to make sure that the Freedom of Information Act applies to this public sector body, the monarchy, as it does to any others. And I was given that assurance as an MP in 2000 that they would apply that way. Well, what's happened ever since then is the royal family has been lobbying the government to exempt them from information, and particularly so after the publication of the so-called spider letters from Charles, which revealed he was, as Prince of Wales, conducting political manoeuvres behind the scenes quite improperly, considering his role. That needs to be looked into. Then we need to make sure that the House of Commons conventions, which largely make it very difficult for MPs to raise royal matters, are swept aside. And then we have to make sure that the House of Commons looks into the finances of the royal family in a way that hasn't done for quite a long time, because they are extortionate in terms of how much money they take from the public purse.
Yes, Norman, I think a lot of people will agree with that. What do you think should happen to Prince Andrew specifically?
Well, Prince Andrew needs to be subject to proper investigation by the police for allegations made by Virginia's Giuffre. Because
should it be the American police? Sorry to interrupt you. Should it be the American police, the British police? Who should look into it? Both of them?
Both.
Okay.
It should be both, because there are allegations of improper behaviour in both areas, both America and Britain. And in 2015, when she made her complaint to the Metropolitan Police, the Metropolitan Police policy was to believe victims. This is Me Too, remember all that?
Yep.
To believe victims. Well, they didn't believe her. They shut the case down. And they shut it down twice more subsequently. So Prince Andrew ought to be interviewed, in my view, under caution by the Metropolitan Police. As far as Royal Lodge is concerned, it's an affront to the taxpayer that we are subsidising him being in Royal Lodge on a peppercorn rent. And by the way, not just him, Prince Edward as well has the same arrangement in his house. Why should one of the richest people in the country, the richest family in the country, have peppercorn rents for massive mansions? It's an insult.
I mean, is this just not coming from your position of being against the royal family in general, or some of it is coming perhaps from your position, which is a perfectly legitimate position to be a Republican and to say that the royal family shouldn't exist? I mean, is there any version of the royal family that would exist with any level of transparency that you would be happy with, Norman? I think it's perfectly legitimate, by the way, to ask questions of Prince Andrew. I'm not saying for a second that it's not.
No, thank you. Well, I mean, look, I've got my new book coming out this month, which is Royal Mint National Debt, and that goes into the finances in great detail. And it doesn't actually call for a republic. You know, I'm not personally trying to make the case for a republic, although many people do make a case with some validity. What I'm doing is saying, if you want a monarchy, this is the kind of monarchy we ought to have in a grown-up democracy, the kind of monarchy we have in other European areas like Belgium or Holland or Sweden or Norway or Denmark. Those monarchies are totally different, and they're much cheaper apart from anything else. Our monarchy is 10 times at least more expensive than any other monarchy in Europe, with £500 million a year roughly to build. The next nearest is the Netherlands at 46 million.
I mean, that is a really shocking statistic. Why is it so expensive? Is it because it's so extensive? Is it because of historical reasons? Tell us why it's so expensive.
Well, it's partly historical reasons. Bear in mind, the monarchy was bankrupt in 1760 when the Crown Estate was effectively formed, which is a public body, not a royal body. And since then, what's happened is the royal family's been exempt from a whole range of taxation arrangements that apply to everybody else. They don't pay inheritance tax when the Queen died, for example. The so-called private estate, the Duchy of Cornwall and Duchy of Lancaster, are exempt from taxes that apply to genuine private estates. Capital gains tax and that sort of thing. And then, of course, we've had the royal family over many decades pleading poverty to the government of the day, getting an upturn in our finances, and actually it's not necessary. Just one stat, if I can, with you. One is that in 2011, the civil list, that was the last year we had a civil list under the old system, was 7.9 million a year grant for the royal family, 7.9 million. This year, the replacement sovereign grant, 132.1 million in just 14 years. That's a massive increase. At the same time, it's hard-working families in this country can't afford to heat their houses or pay for food bills.
When the Chancellor Rachel Reeves looks at the budget next month, what should she do to the royal family's sovereign grant? Is that something that she will be considering within the budget, presumably? And what should she do with that?
Well, I don't know if she'll consider it, but there's a 5-year review which is due to take place next year into the sovereign grant. And quite clearly what needs to happen is it needs to be cut drastically. Prince Charles, as he was then, said when he became king he would have a slimmed-down monarchy. Well, his idea of a slimmed-down monarchy is fewer people on the Buckingham Palace balcony. A slimmed-down monarchy only makes sense if we have a slimmed-down bill, and there's no indication the royal family wants that. So if the royal family won't sort themselves out, then the parliamentary authorities, both the Chancellor and the relevant committees, the Treasury Select Committee and so on, should make sure they do it. And we need to make sure the royal family is, if you want a royal family, has to be in line with other European families, which cost far less than ours does.
Do you believe the royal family should have any role to play in our country?
I personally think it's difficult to justify philosophically having unelected people, because you could end up with someone who's diligent, like Queen Elizabeth II was diligent in her job, or someone who was basically a Nazi in terms of Edward VIII. So, it's a hodgepodge of arrangement to rely on an hereditary principle. But personally, if we had a modern moral family which sorted itself out, I could live with that.
Okay, Norman, thank you. Just before you go, actually, your new book, tell us about it. Tell us what it's called. Sorry, Royal Mint.
It's called Royal Mint, National Debt, which goes into all the finances, and of course it has a lot about Andrew's finances, including material which hasn't yet come out, I might say, and that's out probably in about November the 15th.
And who is it published by?
Bite Back.
I am really sorry, Norman, but for editorial reasons and to avoid an Ofcom complaint, I've got to mention that I am a Bite Back author as well, and my book is called Political Animals. It's out at the moment. Like Norman's, you can buy it from the Bite Back website or indeed on Amazon or your local bookshop. Just to avoid an Ofcom complaint, just to keep us both out of trouble, Norman, I should mention my book, Political Animals, published by Bite Back, as is Norman Baker's Royal Mint, National Debt, The Shocking Truth About the Royals' Finances. Norman, thank you. That's Norman Baker there, the author and also former Home Office Minister as well. He was a Liberal Democrat MP for many years as well, former Transport Minister as well, if I remember correctly. Simon in Suffolk says, why are police involved in a non-crime hate incident at all? No one wants hate incidents, of course, but by definition they're not a crime. Police need to focus on crime. Well, it's really interesting you mentioned that, Simon, because the Metropolitan Police are now saying that they are not going to investigate non-crime hate incidents anymore, and there's an appeal for other different members of other different police forces, I should say, not to investigate them either. Doctors on strike is the issue that Jean in Felixstowe wants to talk about. Jean, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Lovely programme as usual, Peter.
Thank you, Jean.
I wish you still had the cats, but never mind.
I know. Well, listen, we did 100 cats of the week, and it was a really good thing. But
one sitting with me here.
Oh, what's his name or her name?
Suki.
Suki, that's a great name. Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, I still have Jack. He's a wonderful cat.
Yes, I know. Yeah. They're lovely, aren't they? Anyway, I shouldn't have told you all that.
That's all right. Happy to chat cats. What do you want to talk about the doctor's strike, Jean?
Yes, I do. I'll start off by saying that I never thought I'd say this because I'm a member of Reform UK.
Okay.
But I thought I was quite a loyal member, actually. But since I heard Kemi, the leader of the Conservatives, speak at the Conservatives conference, she spoke so well. And what really took me was when she said there'd be no strikes for doctors. And in fact, there was a big ovation, and I thought, that's fantastic. I jump up in the air, I was so pleased. And if she could do that, it might even change her mind off of reform, because I think there shouldn't be strikes for anyone myself.
Certainly, if they're vital services on their their doctors. But I mean, if doctors do want better paying conditions, what should they do? I suppose, and we know as well, Jean, that they got an answer and they got money out of West Streeting the health secretary, didn't they?
Yes, that's right, and I think they got far too much anyway. But the fact is that they got that amount, and they should be content with what they got.
Yeah. It's a fair point, Jean. And listen, we all pay a lot of money and have paid many people over the years into the NHS. So, there are so many other people who perhaps deserve a pay rise, or just perhaps their taxes should go down. I mean, what would you say to Rachel Reeves? She's got the budget next month. What do you think that she should do with the finances?
I'm not really sure about that one. I would say that not on the same thing, but we should pay less money abroad to
the foreign aid,
foreign aid, and that would cut down the money quite a bit. Okay. So I would say that was quite an important thing anyway.
Okay.
And I say my husband is waiting for an operation at the moment. He's had it put off twice, so I hope it's not put off again. Yeah. But
that must be very frustrating. Is the operation put off twice? How long has he been waiting, Jean?
About a year.
Goodness. Okay.
Yes, on and off, about maybe slightly less.
Yeah, well listen, I hope he gets that operation very, very soon. All the very best to you, Jean, and to Suki the cat as well. Thank you for that. Jane says perhaps Ed Davey could be more understanding of the postmasters, as he was the post office minister at the time. All he talks about is Trump, Farage, getting back into the EU, now the royal family. Many want to talk about the state of the country, which has been let down by everybody in SW1, Westminster there. Joanna in Salisbury says, the clock being out, how are we getting on with the clock? Are we nearly there, getting the clock correct? Apparently Luke says it's correct. The process is in action. I'll give you an update after the break on the clock. Luke, and indeed Tommy, has been giving him a hand as well. All the top team behind the glass. Chris has been sitting there doing nothing. Hi Cardi P, the clock is being out is fine if we get extra time for your debate. Oh, Joanna, you charmer. Tower Hamlets was designed to put fear in us and to flex their ability to do as they like. Our government and police are powerless now to stop them, but they also don't have the will or the leadership to either. Interestingly, in Tower Hamlets, Elisa has sent in a voice note about that. I just want to play that now. Elisa in Chelmsford has sent this in about this very, very shocking display, a show of strength really, in Tower Hamlets. Let's hear what Elisa in Chelmsford has to say.
Good morning, Peter. You're looking very dapper today. Regarding the Tower Hamlets and the Islamists walking the streets, I've got to tell you, I find it very scary. I find it scary not for myself, but for my children and my granddaughter. And I keep seeing interviews of people that are warning us that this country is going to turn like Iran, the way Iran was taken over by Islamists. It may take a while, but it's starting. And I'm really, really scared. And I do wonder, are the police scared to deal with it? Is that why they're not clamping down on it? Is the government scared? We need answers, and it needs to be sorted. Great show, Peter.
Elisa, thank you. I really appreciate that. Sometimes people ask me why I start wearing a jacket at this time of the year. It's because I wear a poppy, and if you wear a poppy and put a pin through your shirt, then it destroys the shirt. So that's often why I start wearing a jacket, to have the poppy. I've got my poppy, wearing my poppy with pride. I got my ceramic one yesterday. I like the ceramic ones because they're a little bit less fiddly, and they are selling poppies at the moment. So if you see one out and about, I bought one in, I think it was Victoria Station in London yesterday. There were some really great people there who were going out selling those poppies. So do buy one. The poppy appeal is on. And Simon's been in touch with a very, very helpful message. Simon's in Canterbury. I questioned earlier when Chris Philp said, I didn't say it to Chris Philp, but he talked about the Royal Lodge being a small palace. And I said, what's a small palace? Surely a palace by its very nature is big. Simon says, Cardi P, a small palace is like a big palace, but it's smaller. I hope that helps. Simon, it does help. Stay with us here on Talk.
The town itself, the little village, it's suddenly grown by a quarter of its population. It has only 5,000 residents there, and in the hotel there are about 1,200 asylum seekers who are living in this hotel. And so all the residents who were there protesting, they were saying to me, we have felt a real strain on public services. I've spoken to people whose children have now had to go to separate schools miles away because of the the growing of the population.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who has been in touch, including Karen, who has been in touch on immigration. Karen sent a voice note in. You can do this too, 0344 499 1000. Just send us a voice note the same way you do to anybody else. This is what Karen has to say.
Hi, Peter. Lucy Conley, getting soft on immigration. Do you know what? Why don't we just all open our doors and let them all stay at our houses, yeah? That'd be a good idea, because that's as soft as it's going to get. You know, you can't go any softer unless we open our doors and let people just come in and use our facilities and use our gas and our electric, and we'll just keep paying for them, because we're paying for them anyway.
Thanks very much for that, Karen. I think you mean Lucy Powell rather than Lucy Connolly. So Lucy Powell is the new deputy leader of the Labour Party. Let's hear another voice note from Sharon on the Islamist march in Tower Hamlets in East London.
Hi, Peter. It's quite obvious now that there's somebody high up in government that's letting this happen on our British streets. These Islamists people are doing all this on our streets, and we're just letting them get away. What is it that they know that our government don't feel that they can get a hand on this? They just seem to be going for the right-wing people and the left-wing, and the people that's protesting against every other country except for our own are just getting away with it. What is it that these people have got over the government to let them carry on doing this to our country? It's just absolutely disgusting. Good show, Peter. Sharon from Yorkshire.
Thank you for that, Sharon. I'm not sure it's someone in the government necessarily doing something proactive to let this happen. I think it's maybe more just that it's out of control. Mary in County Down has been in touch and says Tower Hamlets demonstrations remind me of the big parliamentary show of strength marches we used to see in Northern Ireland. Indeed, we see them still in some areas. They're designed to spread fear in the wider community, and the police are powerless to stop them. In Northern Ireland, police and government just ceded control of the areas to the mob, who continue to dominate these areas long after the Belfast Agreement. The same is happening in parts of the UK, including London. These are not armed paramilitary groups, but they're sinister and frightening for law-abiding, decent people. Mark in Lincolnshire has given me a ring about this, 0344 499 1000. Let's just play this clip. Well, it's not a clip, but this footage again, just as Mark is speaking. If we can see this, this is happening and has been happening in Tower Hamlets. These Islamists who are covering their faces with Palestinian and other flags as well, and setting off flares and smoke bombs and things like that. Mark, what do you make of this?
Hi there, Peter.
Hi there.
Hi there, buddy. Yeah, basically, my opinion on this, your caller previously was saying, you know, she's heard lots of people talking about, you know, we're turning into Iran and all this kind of thing. My own belief on all this is she's absolutely right to be worried, because that's pretty much is what's happening. It's, you know, your previous messages there talking about, you know, what do the government know? Are the government scared? All this kind of stuff. No, they're not. They could stop this. They could quell that lot in a day. It wouldn't be a major issue. It would take a lot of resources, but you could do it if you wanted to. They just don't want to. The reality of it is, as happened in Iran and Lebanon and Egypt and all sorts of other places throughout the world and throughout history, the left has a tendency to use Islamism. The Islamists want to destroy the West because they want to take over ultimately, and generally do. The left want to just destroy the West because they hate capitalism. So they tend to use each other, and then once the West is destroyed, the Islamists take over and then kill the left. And you saw hints of that yesterday. So as parts of it, there was a guy from the the
sort of leftist group. I think I saw this clip as well, where it's a really short bit, but he simply says, come on, mate, what are you doing this for? We're all on the same side here. And the person who is on the Islamist side of it says, we're not on the same side, mate. That there's a sense that there's clearly some leftist protest here from what we can see in the footage. Then there's an Islamist protest. And as you say, I find it utterly bizarre that there are loads of people who call themselves socialists, people like Jeremy Corbyn, for example, who align themselves with people who are Islamists, and that is a very, very strange thing. And then, as you say, the Islamists then dump them when the job is done.
Yeah, absolutely. The Islamism and Islam itself, anyway, is a very conservative, very right-wing ideology. So it's always a baffling thing when you actually look at it. But as I say, the only reality and the only logic that you can get from it is the fact that they both have the same intent. They both seek to take over. They don't like what exists. They want to take over. From the left. But
still, I agree with that. But still, when you have peace, love, equality, harmony, trans rights, gay rights, rights for minorities, and that's all fine as far as it goes if that's what you believe. But then you're aligning yourself with Islamism, which is against all that.
Well, this is exactly the point. I mean, you could literally go up to one of these protests, like one of the pro-Palestinian things, where you have it's another place where you find the left and Muslims, and particularly the more Islamist section of the Muslim community, that will unite and they'll be marching the streets, and all the anti-Semitism will come out. And you could go up, you could find one of those guys, and one of the people on the left, and ask them, why don't you go and ask one of these Muslim chaps over here, one of these Islamists, why have they not created? Because we have all of this Queers for Palestine.
Yeah, why haven't they joined?
Yeah, why haven't they done Muslims for gays or something?
Yeah.
Go and ask them that and see the response you get.
I think it's a very fair question. There are, I think it's an Islamist problem. Mark, thank you very much. That's Mark in Lincolnshire there, and there are, of course, many Muslims, including some friends of mine who are very pro-gay rights. Some of them are gay themselves. There's a very good book written about this, actually, by a guy I've known for about 20 years called Mohsen Zaidi, which is about growing up gay in the Muslim culture, and he's written about that. Really, really good book, actually. Lots to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. 29 minutes of the show left. We've got the accurate clock now. It is exactly syncing with the clock way above. I can see two clocks. If I look way up, which is too far to look up and keep my eyes on the screen, it's 12:32, exactly the same as the clock in front of me. So well done. A big snaps. Give Luke Vincent a coconut. Lots to discuss after the break. We'll be talking about this ridiculous story about the most lucrative yellow box junction. £450,000 has been raised in 8 months. We'll also talk about Hadish Kabatu, who's now back in prison after being let out in error. He was on the streets of London and indeed Essex for 2 days. Stay with us.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Kingston upon Thames is a place where I've spent quite a lot of time. I had an aunt who lived in Tolworth, which is just up the road, and we used to meet up in Kingston and go to the cinema there. Lots of people are very, very annoyed in Kingston, southwest London. It is the most lucrative yellow box in Britain. Between January and August this year, it generated just over £450,000 from drivers who entered the yellow boxes illegally, often unintentionally, caused by the actions of another driver, cyclist or pedestrian often. There's a butcher nearby who the Sunday Times has interviewed, says he often stands by the window counting the number of drivers who get stuck on the yellow grid during quiet moments of the day. During 25 minutes between 8:35 a.m. and 9 a.m. on Wednesday morning, there were 5. He says it's not about traffic control, it's a cash cow. The local government isn't going to change anything because it is making them money. Let's speak to Jeremy Feeney, who's a motoring expert. Jeremy, this is clearly to keep people safe to some degree, but also it's a massive cash cow. We see it with speeding cameras as well. Tell us your thoughts on this story.
Well, I'm delighted that in the article they refer to 1970, because what changed was that we've moved since that decade way away from traffic control to monetarisation. Back in the day, the traffic wardens reported to the local police office. The traffic wardens then moved away and came under the councils. All of this revenue-making so-called traffic control, which is yellow box junctions, bus lane contraventions, etc., is done by the council rather than any sort of, I suppose, law enforcement perhaps is a bit too strong way of putting it, but, you know, we seem to no longer be concerned about controlling traffic flow, maintaining safety on the roads, and simply generating vast amounts of revenue from the motorist, because it's easy to do, because we have very sophisticated digital cameras. It makes it very, very hard to contest. I mean, the statistics they mention in the article are frightening, in that, you know, very, very few people bother to contest. Those few that do try to contest this fail. And of course, the other thing that's happened, particularly in London, and I would say particularly in Surrey, which Kingston edges into, is the arrival of large numbers of cyclists.
Yeah.
We now have a breed of motorists who have no road fund licence to pay, don't have registration plates, are completely immune from any kind of responsibility.
Well, you're absolutely right. If they go through a red light, if cyclists go into a yellow box, there's absolutely no way to fine them.
Correct. And that's the difficulty. So the motorist, of course, who has got to do whatever he can naturally to avoid a cyclist, which is a lot of what I would suspect is happening here. My partner actually lives in Molesey, so I'm very much aware of this particular part of affluent.
Yeah. Have you been through the yellow box yourself?
I have.
And is it particularly bad? Is it particularly confusing? Is it particularly difficult, this particular yellow box?
Well, it is because in the way the concept of the box, of course, is that you must only enter it when you have a clear exit. But if you're doing a right-hand turn and you've got a cyclist in front of you, for example, which is going to happen a lot, you can't get out of the box in time. And if you don't get out, instantly fined because of the camera. It's rather like, I mean, another what also happens a lot in the way we seem to have placed pelican crossings. They're often very close to traffic lights.
Is there any fight back here, Jeremy? Is there any way that we can say, actually, we know what you're doing. We see you, councils. We see what you're doing. Your resources, your money from central government, from council tax, it's under pressure because you've got so many people in the social care system. We know you have less money than you want. and you're trying to get it through this. It's not about safety. It's not about motorists being safer. It's not about controlling traffic. It's simply to raise revenue. If you have a single yellow box that's raising 450 grand in not even a year, we're talking about 8 months here. I mean, I would be pretty straightforward in saying that's too much, and you're extracting the Michael here. Well,
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, it's rather like the situation with ULEZ and congestion charging. What we need to do is really, I think, to say to admit that we are no longer trying to maintain traffic flow. We're no longer trying to maintain safe highways or roads for people to drive on, and actually we're just allowing the councils to try and make up their deficit out of this. And they say they're going to use the money on the roads, don't they, in the article, when the journalist investigated this.
But they often don't.
Well, the robbing of the road fund license, as it was known years ago, has taken place sort of almost forever. It's a very cheap, very easy way to make money, and this is wrong. Okay. This is demonising the motorist, I'm afraid.
Jeremy,
it was a cash cow.
Jeremy, thank you for your contribution. That's Jeremy Feeney there, who's a motoring expert. Thank you very much. What do you think of what he said? 0344 499 1000. Loads of other issues as well today. The budget, the Royals. Let's speak to Peter in Cheshire, who's given me a ring about the Royals' finances. 0344 499 1000, the number he has called. Peter, you're very welcome. What would you like to say?
Yeah, what I'd like to just point out is it's okay these politicians coming online slating the Royals for how much they cost, but do they not think the public would like to delve into the finances of the House of Commons and the House of Lords? And
we do have a reasonable amount of information about them. We see their expenses, we see their allowances, we know what their salary is, so maybe we have more information about them than the Royals.
Yeah, well, there probably is, but in real terms, it doesn't cost us quite as much as what he's trying to point out per person. It's nowhere near what the House of Commons costs us and the House of Lords. Nowhere near.
Do you know what?
And also, the tourists that they bring and the money that they bring in, well, I think it's worth it.
Okay. Peter, thank you. Appreciate that. I remember I was working at the BBC with a guy who was moaning about the Royals. And every year it comes out, it says, it costs every taxpayer 72p or whatever it is the royal family costs every taxpayer. Let's say it's 72p. There's this guy called Robin I used to work with at the BBC, perfectly fine guy, but he went on and on and on about the royal family. He said they're spongers, they're people who, we should abolish the monarchy, and went on and on and on about it. And I was quite busy, and I just turned around to him and I said, Robin, if I give you 72p, which was that year's total, if I give you 72p, will you stop moaning about the royal family? He said, yes. So I took out the change in my pocket, gave him 72p, and I was very quiet for the rest of the day. Graham has been in touch and says, if the studio clock is not running at the right time, how will you know the correct time for a Diet Coke break? That is a very good point, Graham. The studio clock is now correct, and thank you to them, but the problem is the Diet Coke, because there was none in the vending machine this morning. So listen, the struggle is real. Grant says, there used to be a box on the Battersea Rise in Battersea in London, and if you entered it from one side, you had to do a left, and the only way you could see if it was clear to go is if you went into the box. Chris says if a box junction is making that much in a short period of time, it indicates a problem with the road layout, not the drivers. And James in Lancashire has also been in touch on box junctions. Didn't realise this would be such a big topic. They have, amongst other things, introduced 8 box junctions in Manchester, says James in Lancashire. Obviously the principle is good. Unfortunately, the implementation of the law does not allow for common sense. If your wheel is just over the line, you're fined. How many times have you followed a large vehicle into the box to suddenly find they've pulled up at the exit to the box? The other correct solution is to wait before entering. That can cause congestion. By the way, in Manchester, you'd be lucky to spot a cyclist in the cycle lanes. They've been a waste of money in Manchester, yet we see new ones on a daily basis, says James. Ian is in Chesterfield and is concerned about the budget. Ian, I understand you're a Samaritan. You listen to people on the phone who have distress in their lives. Tell us a little bit about that and what your thoughts on the budget are.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I've been doing it for 20 years. Just 3 nights a month I do.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Are you staying up overnight as well?
Yeah, we do, yes. It's home-based now. Years ago, it used to be an office. Now you do it from home. You're available from home.
I mean, that's a great bit of volunteering over a very long period of time, so well done, Ian.
Yeah, and my point really was, traditionally, there are exceptions, but generally the calls you get are for people with a terminal illness, or they've had a very painful divorce, or their children have died, or something like that. But I've noticed the last year or two, a much bigger percentage is people, I haven't got any money, I can't afford the mortgage, I can't afford to rent, I don't know where I'm going to live, I've got no hope. And honestly, it's more and more about the fact that people simply can't make ends meet. And somebody phoned me just last night and said I might as well end it all, because when the budget makes it any worse, I'm finished.
Yeah, listen, that must be very distressing to listen to, and it just shows the real cost of living crisis. Do you listen to them? Do you give them advice? What do you do? Tell us how you approach that as a Samaritan.
Officially, we're not allowed to advise. There's certain rules and regulations, but there is a little bit of leeway. And my philosophy has always been, even if I go fractionally outside the guidelines and it means that somebody's still alive tomorrow, I'll take that chance.
Yes.
So I tend to ask them how they would like things to turn out ideally. Is there a halfway house where it could be half as good as they really want it to be? Really, I always feel that the job of people like me, and people do it a lot more than me, by the way. There's a lady that does it 6 days a week.
Really?
It's just, and you don't take it home with you. You have to forget it, because the only important thing is the next call. No, it's fascinating, but obviously it's very upsetting at times as well.
Yeah, of course, of course. And how do you deal with that when it is upsetting? Because you're hearing a lot of very distressing detail, as you say, more and more about the cost of living crisis. And are you getting more calls as a result, or is it the same number of calls? How have you seen that change over the 2 decades that you've done it in?
Certainly far more than when I first started. It really was quite a quiet office most nights. I would say the last year has seen the biggest increase, but there has been spikes, when the financial crash and different things. I think it's going up, and of course we can never get enough volunteers. That's the problem. You've got a growing population, so you've got a growing number of people anyway. A growing number, and I think things are very tough. If you haven't got anywhere to live and you can't afford rent, and there for the grace of God goes a lot of us.
Ian, I've never said this on air before, but I'm just going to say it now. I've called the Samaritans on a couple of occasions, 2 or 3 times I think actually, and when I've had mental health issues, which I've talked about on air before, of anxiety and depression. It's now well under control, and I'm under the care of a brilliant psychiatrist who also happens to be chairman of my local football club. He's a great guy, Stephen. And I can honestly say that the job you do helped me. I didn't speak to you, I'm pretty sure, but I did speak to 2 or 3 really, really good people who give up their time, as you have, voluntarily. And I know you often don't know what the result necessarily is, or whether that person feels better. I'm sure people tell you on the line that they've felt better and that you've helped them. But I just want to say through you that the Samaritans is a brilliant service. It's an incredible thing. And I want to thank you for your 2 decades of volunteering, because it has helped people like me.
Well, and I'm really pleased. I'm a long-term, viewer and listener to the station. I've followed you for a long time. I'm really grateful you've said that, because before I let you go, a lot of people think because you've got a job like yours, or you're a footballer or whatever, you automatically must have a wonderful life that's 100% perfect. And of course, you've just explained to a lot of people that it isn't always like that.
There are problems in everyone's life, and you can be on top of the world, or it seems to people you're on top of the world, and feel dreadful. Ian, give out the number of the Samaritans if people need it this lunchtime, if they're listening and want to talk to someone like you about their issues.
Yeah, it's 118 and it's all online for you to see. Have a good read up, and anybody who wants to be a volunteer, have a read, see if it's what you can do, or you think you can do. There'll be a certain amount of training first, and then you'll find out if you're up to it or not.
Ian, thank you very much indeed. I really appreciate that. That's Ian in Chesterfield there. And if you are affected by issues and you want to get the number of the Samaritans, it's on talktv.com/helplines. There are lots of other different ways you can get help through those It's 116123. That's the number. I think Ian perhaps got it wrong. 116123. He's obviously just answering the calls rather than making them. So 116123 is the Samaritan's number, and it's on there, talk.tv/helplines. Thanks to Ian and thanks to everybody else who does that amazing service. I had a very close relative who did it for a while before I was born, and then I came along and I'm afraid disrupted things when it came to volunteering. We're going to talk to Mike Neville in a minute. He's a retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector about this Haddish Kabatu fiasco as well. I also want to thank, just before we do that, Tad in Cambridge, who says your show is an indispensable institution, especially to anyone who has been indisposed. Tad, I know you've had your battles recently with your health, and I just want to say I hope you feel better soon. And I know that he's got an operation tomorrow, and I sincerely hope that goes very, very well. Please let me know how it goes. Tad says, in all, I found the NHS to be professional, but there are areas of concern where they must do better. I had caused a call on the emergency line on one occasion when a catheter came out. A pre-recorded message said quite proudly, "We guarantee to get back to you within 48 hours, as if that was some sort of accolade. I mean, that must have just been awful for you. I'm very, very sorry to hear it. Listen, I wish you well, Tad, and thank you very much for getting in touch. Let us know how it all goes, and no doubt we'll get your comments on the air again soon. If you want to comment in the next 10 minutes or so, the number is 0344 499 1000. We'll speak to Mike Neville, as I say, about Kabatu and how we stop the next Kabatu next.
The police have their man. This guy's going to be detained, and now he will be deported to Ethiopia. What a sorry tale.
I mean, it's like something out of Inspector Clouseau, and now we'll see if he's actually deported or whether, like the so-called one in, one out, he just hops back on another boat back here again.
Yes, will lessons be learnt from this, Sir Michael?
Given that he went back several times to the prison saying, let me back in, I just wonder whether he went up to a policeman and said, look, will you please arrest me? I want to get back in.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thanks everybody who's been in touch on the Samaritans issue as well. Elisa in Chelmsford says, thank you for sharing your personal story. As you said, you can seem to be on top of the world but be dying inside. Look at Robin Williams. He made people laugh, but we had no idea what he was battling inside. Thank you for raising this issue. And Jason quite correctly says there aren't enough Ians in this world, people who volunteer. Stephen Millings in Belfast says, I was a Samaritans volunteer for 10 years. It made me feel very proud, and thank you. There are a load of lovely messages coming in. I probably better not read them all out, but thank you for that. Let's just remind ourselves of what we talked about in the show a bit earlier on as well. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, I tackled him on the one in, one out issue because, of course, one of those migrants who came across in a dinghy, then they sent him back to France, and then he's come back. Wes Streeting says it's working. Let's just remind ourselves of that.
Well, I think it's too early to say that one in, one out isn't working. And in fact, the fact
it isn't working. You've got someone who's come back. Someone's come back. It's not working.
The fact that he is in this country and has been detected is an example of the biometrics working. He's been apprehended. He will be deported, and the guy will have wasted a lot of his own money paying people.
He's wasted a lot of our money as taxpayers. He's wasted a heck of a lot of ours.
Word will soon get around that if you are coming to this country illegally, you will be dealt with and you will be deported. And more generally, we have seen record numbers of deportations in our first year.
But that's not true, Wes,
There is more to do.
That's not true, because you won't be deported. There are a few dozen people who've been deported. What's happening, if you look at the levels, the percentages...
But that's only in the one in, one out scheme. That doesn't include all deportations, and we have seen those numbers of deportations go up. That started under Yvette Cooper. Shabana Mahmood will continue in that vein.
And the vast majority of them have been on that. The vast majority of them being voluntary is what I said at the end there. I want to talk to. Have we got Mike Neville? Oh, no, we haven't got Mike Neville. We're trying to get him. Tommy in London has been in touch and says, great show. Shout out to the team behind the glass. They do a great job. Just a message to say that the British royal family are the only royals in Europe to annually cost more than £80 million, where Sweden, Norway, Luxembourg and Belgium, with all of those families having fewer than 10 working family members, they all cost their taxpayers less than £30 million, almost a third less than the British royals. Whereas the only two monarchs that cost less than £10 million are Spain and Liechtenstein, who are the only royal family to find themselves both having fewer than 5 working members of their families. Yes, it may be cost effective, but you don't get the royal workforce with that many members helping communities. In Britain, we only have 4 under 40 working royals, with Her Majesty the King's slimmed down monarchy slimming down naturally, leaving many fringe members needing to step in to get the work done, says Tommy in London. Thank you for that. Clearly, Tommy knows an awful lot about what he's talking about there on the royal family. We do have Mike Neville now. He's a retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector. Mike, with Hadish Kabatu, clearly the Metropolitan Police did their job, but the prison service didn't. What should happen now, do you think? Oh, there we are. Mike Neville has gone. So that's the phrase. I remember I was sitting in a lecture once at university, and loads of people had their a seminar actually, and people had their laptops on. And there was a bit where the guy taking the seminar said, just one more thing, and then someone had switched off the computer and went do-do-do-do, closing the laptop, which is very funny. So I think we perhaps won't speak to Mike Neville before 1 o'clock, but nonetheless, thank you to Dee, who has said, bless you, Peter, for talking about your experience. I'm so glad you're okay now. We've helped many viewers with what you've spoken about. You're a lovely, kind, decent human being. That's very kind. Listen, thank you for that. And I think that, lots of people will have their own stories to tell. Ed in Winslow says, with regards to yellow box junctions, I think half the problem is drivers who don't actually know the rules, which leads to mistakes and frustration with other road users. Would you believe you can wait in a yellow box if your exit is clear and you're turning right, says Ed in Winslow. He's a former driving instructor, so he knows what he's talking about. John in Rochester, just a couple of minutes, John, before the news, to talk about one in, one out. What do you think of what Wes Streeting was saying earlier on, John?
Well, I mean, I'm not being funny. Like, one in, one out. I mean, let's look at it another way. If I was to give you £1 and you gave me £1 back, are we going to be any richer? Are we?
No, we're not. No, we're not. And also, we know this. And this guy's come across, John.
Is it?
Yeah, you're right, John. And this guy's come across. Then we send him back. Then he comes across again. He hasn't been deterred, has he?
Yeah, but we're meant to be accepting that one in, one out is a good thing we should be settling for, to stop the boats and smash the gangs and all that. With one in, one out. One in, one out is not good enough. Even if it does work, it's still not good enough.
It's a very good point. What do you think should happen, John?
Well, I think the numbers should be reduced. I mean, if we can't afford to put, the heating on for the old people and stuff like that, then how on earth, we've got to put taxes up and all this stuff. The cost of living is going through the roof and all that stuff. How on earth can we afford to pay for all these people that we don't know who we are to put them in hotels when we don't even know? We've got our own people that should be put in hotels, not even being offered hotels. Left sort of thing. All these people that pay tax in this country being treated second. It's just no good. 1 in, 1 out does not work, and if they come back anyway, and 1 in, 1 out, that doesn't reduce the numbers at all.
Yeah. Listen, thank you so much, John. I really appreciate that. That's John in Rochester there. He gave me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Thanks to everybody who got in touch. Sorry not everybody got on today. It's been quite a busy show, but I do appreciate everybody who's been in touch. Lots to discuss tomorrow when I'm on between 4 and 7. In fact, I'm on all this week on Drive between 4 and 7, so I hope you can join me for those shows as well. Thank you to the top team behind the glass. Chris Jacobs has been the producer. The assistant